That as we start the radio side of everything. And hey, Dirt Road, thank you so much for kicking off the Super Chat tonight. Really do appreciate it. The Super Chat is a great way to support what we do on a nightly basis, so thank you so much to everybody who donates tonight. War Eagle, good to see you. And there's the gorgeous Jan. She goes soft J sometimes for yawn. Yeah, but you never know which day that is. Here we go. Who else do we have? Because we are running out of time. Ryan, good to see you. Thanks for coming on in. And, oh my gosh, I don't think we're going to make it. Marty Burbach, good to see you. And Phil Minervino, nice to have you here. The gorgeous Thin Lizzie Borden, nice to see you again, my good friend. And Benji, how you doing? Good to have you here. I think we're done. All right, Super Chat is open. Your questions in hour 2. This is a heavy-hitting night. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, ring that bell if you are new here. Grant Cameron, Nicole Sakach are here. We're about to rock. It's UFOs all night long. Do me the favor. Get your horns up. Bumblefoot, let's rock. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KTNL. All of our archives are free. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out Bumblefoot. Read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. It is a special night tonight as we bring in Grant Cameron and Nicole Sakach, two of the top UFO researchers in North America, both very successful authors on the subject of the phenomena as well. If you hadn't heard today, the Pentagon released a little bit of a memo. It said, basically, well, let's read it. Today, Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks, in close collaboration with the Director of National Intelligence, directed under the Secretary of Defense and for Intelligence and Security to establish within the office of the USD INS, the Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group, otherwise known as AOIMSG, as the successor to the United States Navy's Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. The AOIMSG will synchronize efforts across the department and the broader U.S. government to detect, identify, and attribute objects of interest in special use airspace, and to assess and mitigate any associated threats to safety of flight and national security. To provide oversight of the AOIMSG, the Deputy Secretary also directed the USD to lead an Airborne Object Identification and Management Executive Council to be comprised of the DoD and intelligence community membership, and to offer a venue for U.S. government interagency representation. Incursions by any airborne object into our SUA pose safety of flight and operation security concerns and may pose national security challenges. DoD takes reports of incursions by any airborne object, identified or unidentified, very seriously and investigates each one. This decision is the result of planning efforts and collaboration conducted by OUSD and other DoD elements at the direction of the Deputy Secretary Hicks to address the challenges associated with assessing UAP occurring on or near DoD training ranges and installations highlighted in the DNI Preliminary Assessment Report submitted to Congress in June 2021. The report also identified the need to make improvements in processes, policies, technologies, and training to improve our ability to understand UAP. In coming weeks, the department will issue implementing guidance, which will contain further details of the AOIMSG director, organizational structure, authorities, and resourcing. Let's bring in our special guest tonight for this show, Grant Cameron. Been studying this subject for well over 40 years, and Nicole Sakach, research assistant to Grant, as well as author. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, am I?
Yes, we got you both. Grant, I want to start with you because in translation of watching Twitter go crazy, the media outlets go crazy over this, and the fact that Senator Gillibrand is getting close to try and get her bill passed within Congress, to me, let's just get to the heart of the issue here. It sounds like we have officially seen the start of the war of words between the Pentagon and government officials when it comes to unidentified aerial phenomena.
I sort of look at this today, and I think it's like a Nigerian phone scam call center. I mean, it's just now we got to change the name again to airborne object, instead of UAPs, which Hillary Clinton brought up in 2015. I kind of laughed at this, but it's almost, if you remember back to Melinda Leslie, we did a couple of interviews, Nicole and I, with her, and she asked the question to Jim Semivan, what is there that I could do that would get you so upset you'd never talk to me again? And he said, mess with the money. He said it 4 times. And so this is what I think this basically is. It's this almost like the government now, there's a big war as to which bathroom we go to. Nobody can agree to anything. And we have a situation now where we've lost a war to a Stone Age tribe. There's really no wars going on, and yet we got a $740 billion defense budget that's coming up now. We got all this money, no wars, and it's basically, to me, it's like a fight for money. It's a fight for control of this whole thing. If you remember back, I think at the beginning of the year, with the UAP task force, where they actually demoted the head guy to another job, and they put in a guy with a lower rank, which tended to indicate they were going to move this thing out. So that's, to me, it's just this constant war inside the old idea that, who's in control, who's going to get the money, and who runs the show. And you see this over and over again in this subject and everything else. It's almost like the thing where you talked about, with the ATIP, where they actually got shut down by these guys that stole their money and stuff like that. So I'm not really surprised this is going on. It's sort of a chess game, and there's a lot of money there, and nobody's really there's really nothing for the money to go. So everybody's basically fighting over this big pot of money and who controls the money and who controls the whole thing. It's like Dave's dollars. Like, you go to work every day, you pay your taxes, and now all the government officials and the Pentagon people are going to fight over where Dave's dollars goes, who gets to spend it.
Nicole, I want to get your opinion. Have we seen the start of the war of words?
Well, I think the Washington Examiner's headline today was pretty much says yes to that. And that headline was Pentagon launches preemptive strike on Senate UFO law. So, I mean, I think those of us who have been following the amendment have kind of heard the rumor that this may get passed before Thanksgiving break. So we all were kind of like ears perked towards that, but then we quickly realized it wasn't going to happen. And then we all heard the 29th. So it was kind of like we're in that limbo. And I know quite a few people were whispering that something was going to happen in this limbo. And then I woke up this morning to this. And to me, it's kind of like Lou Elizondo has said. He's made statements. These are the same guys who have been trying to silence this narrative for the last 70 years. And in my own opinion, my thoughts were, this is like the moment where the guy swallows the key so the other person can't get it and open the door. Yeah. So it's like, now we have to wait for 3 terrible options. They're either going to poop out the key, throw it up, or we get to cut it out of them when they die. So There you go. I also look at it in the sense this is their last ditch move to kind of close what they already have. And we've all been saying this narrative's being rewritten from like 2004 to now. Is this their last ditch effort to kind of close off what they've already done and have and don't want out? It's kind of like, you guys go do your thing now with this stuff, but this is ours. We're not moving it anywhere.
No, I can definitely see that. And looking at some of the bigger names that we know in this field, Chris Mellon and Lou Elizondo especially, Grant, they were very upset with the direction that this seems to be going. And I want to show our listeners on Twitch and YouTube a little bit, but we'll read it here for our radio audience. And this basically states the following from Lou Elizondo, and I'm going to give credit to James Landoli for letting me use this tonight. From Lou Elizondo, number 1, important update. Before anyone gets too excited about the recent Pentagon announcement of a new UAP group, please consider the following. 2A, USDI is precisely the same organization that has underplayed and tried to kill the UAP effort for years. 2B, USI or USDI is an oversight organization and non-operational. 2C, nowhere is there a requirement to provide unclassified findings to Congress or work with our international partners. Number 3, given that the elements still exist in the Pentagon who are actively underplaying the significance of this topic, this is akin to giving an alcoholic the key and control to a liquor cabinet. Number 4, if you want to maintain UAP UFO secrecy, this is exactly how you do it. And number 5, this is a direct and blatant attempt to circumvent and undermine the Senate. Those are very harsh words by Luis Elizondo here coming into this, Grant. I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I mean, this goes back. I mean, this is basically, we're still relying on some big brother government guys to give us the answer. And earlier today, I was actually asking one person about some material that I knew. I said, was this briefed to the highest level of organization where they would know what to do with this? And he said, yes, they were. Yes, this stuff was. This has been going on. Dr. Eric Walker, back in the 1990s, I wrote this up in UFOs, Area 51 and Government Informants. Dr. Eric Walker, at one point, we were pushing him to try to talk before he died. And he said, why should we change the rules to satisfy your curiosity? And if you remember back, Bush told Carter, curiosity is not sufficient need to know. I firmly believe there are people who know what's going on here, and they aren't about to roll over and play dead. They've got the power, they've got the money, and they're basically shutting out. And it's true. I mean, these are the guys that are running the thing. But if you take a look at even what have we learned since this whole operation started, say a year ago with the task force and with the report, I argued with this whole thing about, somebody said it was 74 pages, and then Danny Sheehan said it was 400 pages, and then this argument broke out, and I said we can't even get to how many pages are in the classified report. Nothing is going to the public. So when you say what are we going to learn or what are we going to get, we're a long way from this. This is the guys at the top fighting. You and I are miles away. None of the classified stuff has come down to us. We don't know anything more than we knew, say, 5 years ago, except that now Congress has some classified briefings and they know a little bit about what's going on. But I believe that there's a lot of stuff at the highest levels that they know, and they'll be damned if they're going to give it up. I even posted today, I'm putting in a book, I'm putting in this story I got out of Stanton Friedman's collection, the whole Cuban story from 1967. It was the first thing I looked at when I went to Stanton's files, and that was this whole thing that U.S. intelligence, NSA, through a Navy listening post in Florida, picked up the fact that a Cuban jet in March 1967 had been scrambled, and they'd both locked on, and they were told to take down this UFO that was coming in over Cuba. And as the lead guy locked on to shoot, the plane just disintegrated in midair. This is all picked up by U.S. intelligence. This is all followed. And the guys that reported it were told to hand in all your material, give us all the audio tapes. This was just a malfunction in the plane. So they've got this kind of stuff. They know a lot more than what we think they know. And the guys that have this stuff in the black ops or whatever whoever they are or whoever they work for, has this material, and we're a long way from any sort of disclosure. I would say, like Elizondo says, when you move it away from Congress, that was the one move that we made that might have saved us, is if Congress has part of this stuff, then at least the people are running it. It may still be covered up and we're not going to know anything, but at least you have an element of the government that is running the operation. And if it's true what Lou says, we're going back to the thing where the guys who aren't even elected are going to continue to run the operation.
Very true, Grant. As we continue on here, this is a great divide. I had someone on the inside who I was texting with today tell me something very, very interesting. And let me just find it here. And he said to me, the new effort is the same old gatekeepers, secret keepers. I support Senator Gillibrand. Goff et al., as in Susan Goff from the Pentagon, et al., are the same old bad guys in my opinion. I'm hip deep in making pies. Sorry, brother. Well, it's Thanksgiving down there. And him and I are going to talk this weekend. But I mean, the whole point that I'm getting at here is I think this is the first real public scene we've seen about this great divide in ufology, which stems from Washington, D.C. and Virginia.
Yeah. I agree with you. I mean, the fact that Congress gets cut out, if they're able to do it, but it may work out well in terms of the more discussion we have about this, the more people that get exposed. And Elizondo and Mellon played their cards and seem to be against this, and it just exposes and it creates more major reporters, say New York Times, Washington Post. You'll start to dig in this and start asking questions. So it may not be the end of the world yet, but it's still, the basic problem is that people, when you hear this kind of stuff, people will just basically say, so when are we going to get disclosure? And it's like you're never going to get disclosure because it's not anything that what anybody thinks it is. It's this, you start to see the stuff they have behind the scenes. And I've brought this up numerous times. I had the Wilson leak document, which I put out and got it onto the internet. And you see with that, which, if this document is real, and it is real, is the whole idea that the whole thing's been run off by a bunch of guys who aren't elected. And then if you see the Kit Green tape that I released, had 4 years ago, and we released, and you see what Kit Green was talking about, they're way ahead of. We're back to what I did in one lecture. I said that this is like we're going to go back to grade one again. And I said, no more. I've done this for 46 years. I'm not going back to grade one for the 47th year. We got to get past this whole stupid idea, do UFOs exist? And so what we've got now is we got this new organization. So let's get a committee, and Dave, you be the chairman and I'll be the president. And we're going to study UFOs, and we're going to gather all the UFO stuff. We're way beyond that. That's to me is what I'm most interested in, is I believe there are people in the government who are way beyond are there UFOs, and we keep falling for this whole thing of waiting for the government to hand us disclosure, and they aren't. It's what Dr. Eric Walker said. Why should we change the rules to satisfy your curiosity? You're just curious. Tell me you're just curious. When you get it, what do you think you're going to do with it? You're wasting your time. You're up against the windmills. You're never going to get the answer. Give it up. That's what he told us. This is 30 years ago he told us this.
All right, Nicole, let's bring you in here because, like I just asked Grant, I'm curious your opinion. We have heard about this divide between Washington, D.C., the military and the old guard not wanting anything to do with the UFO subject. Keep it under wraps. The public's not ready for it. Everything is bad and evil and demons, and we don't want to go down that road. Then there's a more progressive side that's saying, wait a second here. We've got things going on. The public is seeing them. They're opening up their minds. And maybe we should check into this under national security or whatever that may be. This divide, once again, is now public for the first time. It's like the cat is finally out of the bag. What's your opinion? You're on mute, hon.
I had to take a deep breath to go, what is my full opinion on that? It does show the division, and I think it's really showing who is for exposure / disclosure and who is on the other side of that fence. I think it's going to show who's holding the line. But I don't know. I think, to follow with what Grant was saying, it's not going to be a completely like lost or bad thing. This is going to prompt more eyes on the topic, more news coverage, more people throwing their hat into the ring. And so when you're talking about this division, you know how we hate kind of saying it's good or bad or demon versus evil. You know, it is going to show that division a little more clearly, so we can kind of see whose narrative is coming from where, maybe. But I think, and you guys probably have never personally or privately heard me quote somebody or talk about them, but I kind of think Jeremy Corbell hit it on the head when he corrected Fox News by saying believer. You know, I think those who are saying this is a belief fall on a certain side of this line. And it's not really what we believe, but it's the beliefs that they hold to. And I don't want to turn this into a demon argument or people that follow demon type thinking and what religions they claim to fall into themselves. Like, I don't want to turn it into that. But I think that is also a change in the way of what is thinking and this progression of what's moving our community forward and a lot of other public policy things forward. So we can't always like call them all bad guys when they're working for our agenda either. So it'll be good in the end. And after the amendment passes and all of this is enacted, we just have to wait and see. We're still in a holding pattern. So we'll just have to wait and see how this shapes up.
What are you dropping around there?
Dog's going nuts.
Is that your dog?
Feed me. Yes.
Okay. All right. Just had to make sure.
It's been 2 days. He's going crazy. I might be
He wants to be on the show. Put him on the show.
Yeah,
Let me make up another point about this. We have actually, like, as I say, we have 3 different levels. We have the guys who control the secrets, who know, and I think know an awful lot more than people really think they know about what's really going on here. Then you have guys like Elizondo and guys who are broken loose, who want this thing moved out. And then you have the public, who is totally clueless. They have no clue. And it's still going to be classified. Even if the Elizondo people get control of this thing, there's still really not an offer. It's still going to be national security. It's like, you know, how do we get the technology? How do we get these things to go 500 miles an hour under the ocean? And it's technology and this kind of stuff and weapons. And it's in front of the Senate Appropriations and Intelligence Committee. And I even pointed out on Twitter today, this from 2017, where Tom DeLonge says to one of my sources, he was told to go in front of there and bring up the worst things they can. It was this effort to get money, and they got the money, which is fine, but it still has to get to the people who are paying the bills, like the guys who are paying the tax dollars. To me, I still see the major obstacle is that the vast majority of this stuff is going to be classified. They're not going to tell us what's going on. It's going to be used for technology, and then if there's some spin out on the end that we get a hold of. But there's 3 levels. So there's the black ops guys. There's guys that are trying to break away and get money for research. But then there's the public who's totally clued out and not even a part of this. And we're supposed to cheer for one side or the other side. And I think we just bypass the whole thing, listen to them, but go to the whole thing where I think the biggest thing that's happened to me in the last couple of years is when I heard Bob McGuire was going to consciousness and he wants to do interviews. And I go, wow, now we're getting somewhere. I mean, now we're moving past this thing. You know, are we going to get technology? What is the metal made out of? All this kind of stuff. And we're getting to something that I think that the people on the top know, And that's this idea that this is not what people think it is. It's a little more complex than people think it is. And the people need to know what's going on. And I think that would make the world a better place. But it's all this classification that you just hear,
Right.
we're gonna classify this, and you need to bring these people into the loop or whatever. When does the public get brought into the loop?
And on that note, Grant Cameron, Nicole Sakach, the UFO Report. The Pentagon strikes first. AOIMSG. Memorize that, because right now it means something. We'll get into it more on Spaced Out Radio next. That was a hard-hitting first half hour. We're dropping the gloves here tonight.
Yeah. Well, it's a big topic for the day. I mean, it's especially when you get this acronym. I mean, how do you supposed to remember that? And then I think you forgot to mention who was the oversight. What was the name of the oversight group? Let me see. Let me look it up here. It'll be supervised by the AOIMEXEC, or Airborne Objective Identification and Management Executive Council. It's like, holy cow.
Oh, yeah.
Just crazy.
I think they do it so that way people will easily forget it. They have no idea of the ruthlessness of UFO Twitter.
Yeah, and it's the code words. Like it's like a secret thing. Like all these intelligence guys that are sort of interacted with over the years, and they want to play bird code, and they want, you have to be in the loop and know all the acronyms and all the codes and
well,
stuff
this
like
reminds me of digging around in the documents and finding they're calling it like aerial vehicles or underwater vehicles or advanced this and rover stuff, and it's like they bury it underneath these close words but not quite close, and this is kind of the same old stuff. Just like sneaking this in right after or right before Thanksgiving.
I thought they were going to do it Friday. I really did.
Well, you expected this?
I had heard from a very trusted source, maybe or maybe not on camera with us, that it said it was coming down.
Okay. Yeah, so then they're leaking it. I mean, then they're putting it out. I mean, there's this, it'll be interesting to see how it unravels. But to me, it's still this whole idea about who's going to fight over this seven. Like, the difference, the American military this authorization went up by $25 billion in 1 year. The Canadian defense budget is only $24 billion. The increase in the American defense budget is bigger than the Canadian defense budget. And people don't realize the amount of money that is there. And it's the whole idea is it's like a feeding frenzy on who's going to get the money and who's going to control the situation and who's going to control the narrative on this thing. So,
but I mean, you're talking like military money and them wanting like a cut of the big giant pie. I think a lot of what the Pentagon doing this kind of shuffle, I think what I'm hearing is this is that special access programs that are so black. We truly think that they're corporations now, like global corporations that are controlling this. And when you talk about corporations, global corporations, and people with that level of money, like the 1% of the 1%, I don't know. It gets ultra conspiratorial and materialistic and breakaway societal.
Yeah, but there's still a lot of money. I remember when the guy was I think it was the Philadelphia Inquirer first wrote the article back 20 years ago about the black ops when he sort of exposed, and he's talking about guys walking around with suitcases with $1 million in a suitcase and stuff like that. That's the whole thing is the oversight thing, where if at least it's in Congress, you have some sort of oversight. But if it goes back to this other group, well, then it's like a free-for-all again. I mean, you don't even know where the money's going, and nobody has an oversight over or what it's all about. And it's supposed to be government of the people, by the people, for the people.
Right. And that's kind of the other big conspiracy line I was reading about today, or hearing people say, that this is also what's the best way to put it? since corporations have already had access to this and they've already built their companies on this, there's no way to like backpedal that and give what they've profited off of back to the people.
Oh, you can't.
So that's also why it's being back in the bag or controlled or trying to be controlled instead of transparent, like the amendment.
And if you're a black ops guy, you can't blame the guy. It's like Dave, selling Ford trucks. I mean, you're selling your Ford truck. You tell everybody, the disadvantages of Japanese cars and why this car is better. And it's a sales operation. There's nobody's going to suddenly say, okay, I'll go and get a job at Motel 6 and you can take all the money. And I mean, they control it. They're not going to release control.
All right, guys, hold on one sec. Big thank you so much to our super chatters tonight, Lori. And another Lori, Dirt Road, G West, Rob, Vash the Impaler, Pix, and Jim Bob for the amazing super chats. It's a great way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. Don't forget that you could hit that subscribe button, ring that bell if you don't mind. Thank you to all the veterans tuning in. We love you. Here goes the second half hour. Here we go, the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do us the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on with our UFO panel tonight after what happened with the Pentagon starting up a new UFO task force. We're going to get into the AOIMSG tonight. Nicole Sakach and Grant Cameron are here. Welcome back. And Nicole, I want to start with you on this one, if you don't mind, because right before the break, we were talking a little bit about this tension between the faction that does not want these reports brought to the public and the government officials that are brought to the public. A lot of people are paying attention to Senator Gillibrand right now. Tell us who she is and literally what this bill is all about, if you don't mind.
Oh, heavy. Thanks. Make sure I get this all straight. I can't really give you a full background on her. I know just as much as anybody does at this point. She is a member of I believe the Senate Committee on National Security. Am I getting that correct?
I believe so.
As are the other three politicians that have joined her in this amendment, making it bipartisan. So that I found interesting because we were talking about this with our now vice president almost a year ago, how she was a part of this select committee. And so now we're seeing this in action, I think, a little bit. And I like the amendment. There's already been an amendment passed. They went from, what was it, Arrow, and now it's Astro. And they've said the name might even change again. But this one's good because it's inclusive. What was UFO Jesus saying earlier today? This one has teeth. I think that's what everybody's saying, teeth. And I have the crooked teeth, so I like things with teeth. And this, in a roundabout way, calls for more transparency and does include people from our community. Whether you want to call it the general public or the UFO community, it is calling for academia to be involved. And I think that's the only thing about all of this that is maybe getting experiencers excited. So,
yeah, as usual, experiencers got left out of this. Whoever you're talking to, there's no mention of experiencers, and I still say there's not that much mention of transparency to the public who are paying the bill on the thing. It's good that you've got Congress in there and trying to take control of this thing and get it, but you still have got to bring in the consciousness element, the experiencer element, which I think is not there. And it's like this idea. I've got an FOIA for the Office of Science and Technology Policy inside the White House, because what I want to find out is this military, because a lot of people say, no, they're going to bring in science people. I want to see. So I want to see if the science advisor to the president is involved in this, because if this is coming from the Pentagon, then it has to be some sort of green light from the White House to allow this to happen. And the question is this thing going to get into science? Is like Science Bob going to get involved? Or is this still going to stay inside classified channels, and that you need very high security clearances in order to get it? It's fine if, Congress people get these high security clearances and get briefed, as long as the information flows down to the people. But if it doesn't flow down to the people, what's the point? I mean, so what? These two elements are having a big fight. Who cares? I mean, it's like, I'm more concerned about the people on the street that need to know what's actually going on, that it might change their life, rather than can we develop some blue meanies that we can go and harass our neighbors with and stuff like that.
Let me jump in real quick before I forget this thought, because in a roundabout way, they did bring up experiencers when it's talking about the adverse effects that are known and documented. And I think there was even a tweet today from who we love bringing into this conversation, and Kit Green. And he said that a lot of the language, he agreed with, which I thought was interesting, because Kit Green is the one who was running around wanting to know the effects. And we like to talk about him and Jim Peniston and that whole narrative. So this is interesting with what we know he works on and who he's questioned. And it's interesting that he's all of a sudden like tweeting or commenting about this as well. He stays silent so often. So
my reservation,
Kit Green.
my reservation about Kit Green would be the whole deal where he's got military witnesses, and it comes to this reflective quality of right. This whole thing about, and that was what I was writing up today. I'm writing up a chapter on these injury things, where you start looking at this, how injuries occur and stuff like that. And that's where I put that thing with Tom DeLonge from 2017, like 8 months before he went public, the idea that he was in front of the Pentagon and armed services, and he was told to bring up the worst things he could think of. And that's this fear thing. You need the element in order to get the money, because if there's no fear, if there's no threat here, well, then the interest goes away inside of Congress. That's because in the Obama administration, what they were saying is a threat to airline traffic, and I guess nobody believed them. So they've upped the ante. So the whole weapon thing, I brought it up. I don't know if we mentioned it. I guess the book hadn't come out yet, but with the whole book, the one line they left out in the book was what I maintain was when they spent it. George Knapp said the people they sent in these armed guys, that seemed to be the thing, that the people who were armed had the worst experiences. And these three special forces guys who were armed were on the ranch. And if you read the Skinwalker book, they talk about how they realized that if they took one more step, they'd be dead, all this kind of stuff. And the one thing that I'm absolutely sure, I haven't absolutely confirmed it. I know someone said it. I'm trying to find the actual video where it takes place, where they were given the message in their head, a telepathic message, leave, you are not welcome. And so it's this whole idea of, special forces, people with guns, don't take a CE5, don't take your gun to a CE5, that it's a reflective quality that you get Mission Rama, you get the CE5 people who don't have this negative thing, and yet they're spinning this negative thing about it's this threat. And you need the threat, because if you don't have the threat, nobody's going to listen to you. So I think a lot of that whole thing about the injury thing is a play to create the fear.
Right.
Very, very true. Let's go back.
I was going to throw in that I did read today that they were, who linked it, they said, not unlike Havana syndrome, when they were describing these symptoms and like what could be happening or at play. So I thought that was interesting too. It's like, and I say that only because the general public has kind of paid attention to Havana syndrome, where they might not necessarily know what symptoms we're talking about when it comes to UFO, UAP. So,
yeah.
All right, let's get into the whole divide thing, between the two sides here, and why this is causing controversy within Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, who were very outspoken today on social media about it. Yes, this story has hit everything from major news stories to political and military magazines, but Grant, why do we have this divide right now in the two factions of government, one military, one voted in, really trying to fight for power over this subject?
Well, again, it comes back to the fact that if you had the power and then someone comes along and says, I think it's a good idea that Dave gives up all the money and that he's gotten all the black budget programs and we're going to take it over, they'll say, to heck with you. And that's what you saw what happened to Lou was when he first came public, these guys started to attack him and make up stories about him and stuff like that. And he had to file the Inspector General complaints because they were going after him. If you step on the toes of the guys with the money and the power, they are not just going to roll over and play dead. That's what Walker said. Why should we change the rules to satisfy your curiosity? We think we're saving the world. You're in the way. Get the heck out of here. We are not going to talk to you. We're not going to do it. So I think it's just this pushback thing that when you get somebody like Lou Elizondo would be seen like a defector, like this guy ratted us out. He's out there. He's bad news. We got to shut him down. And this may be just their latest effort rather than making up stories about him and stuff where he can file complaints where they take control of the whole thing and take control of the narrative. It's who's running the narrative. Because the guys on the top, you can say they're bad guys, it's out of control or whatever, but I can guarantee you, because we dealt with Walker, who knew what was going on, and Walker believed they were saving the country. In fact, you mentioned Kit Green. There's a chapter I'll be putting on Facebook from one of my books where Kit Green goes to see Dr. Eric Walker. And because Bill Moore had found out that we were dealing with Dr. Eric Walker, who was chairman of the board of the Institute for Defense Analysis, where Bob McGuire worked. This is the top military think tank in the country. He was the co-developer of the homing torpedo. He had 14 honorary doctorate degrees. He was the president of Penn State University. Hell put off Kit Green. Everybody was trying to get a hold of him because they realized that this guy was on the inside. He knew exactly what was going on. So they tell the story. Jacques Vallée tells the story that Kit Green goes to see, based upon my interviews and stuff, he goes to see Dr. Eric Walker. And he says he comes in with he's CIA with his credentials. I'm allowed to talk to you. And he gives his credentials. And Walker says to him, okay, tell me 2 reasons why I should tell you what's going on. And Kit Green gives him 2 answers. And then Kit Green says, apparently I didn't give him the right answers, because immediately he flipped out and threw me out of his office and said, you're not the president. I don't have to tell you anything. And that's what it comes down to, is people who step over the line and say, okay, I'm gonna take over the thing now. Give me the money. We want to do this. The guys that are on the top, right or wrong, think they're saving the world, and they are not about to give up power, and they're going to do whatever they can to keep the whole thing going. Just like the United States is not going to give up power to Russia or suddenly go together with China. It's a male, it's a left brain. It's a me over we. I'm running the show, and it's a game. The ends justifies the means. Just because you think you got a good idea, we're not going to let you come in here. We're not going to let you take over. We are going to shut you down because you're bad news. You've defected, and the guys with the power are not going to roll over and give up the power. As simple as that.
All right, Nicole, I want to bring you back in here for a second, because earlier you quoted the Washington Examiner. I'm going to read a little bit from this article that was put out this afternoon. And it says, now refiled with bipartisan support, Senator Kristen Gillibrand's amendment would significantly strengthen the government's investigation of UFOs. Most notably, the legislation would do several things the AOIMSG ignores. These include forming a well-rounded, resourced anomaly surveillance and resolution office, focusing on transmedium UFOs, which operate underwater, in the air, and in space, instead of the AOIMSG's focus on only those in controlled airspace. The amendment would mandate an oversight committee that includes a range of non-military experts and some civilian academics. This almost sounds, like they're setting up Avi Loeb's Galileo project to help out in her project. Could I be right there? Could I be wrong?
I think you're exactly right. I think it is setting that up to work, and to work. I think, That's the exact kind of academic civilian project they want to bring in on this. I think that's the transparency we've been hearing about, and that's the bone they're going to throw us in all this. But I don't know.
That would save the day if they bring in academics, if they bring in the science advisor's office in the White House or whatever. Then I'm happy with it, because then it's going to move out and we're going to get some discussion outside of the military. But I'll guarantee you, when Gillibrand or whoever tries to bring that in, the people who in the military are going to cut those people out. They are not going to allow some academic to come in when they see this thing as a means to develop the technology. Because that's what I say, what the whole the ASOP thing was about, was not that, oh, we got this ranch, a 480-acre ranch in Utah that's a threat to national security. That's not what it was about. It was about, they go, holy cow, they're putting bulls in trailers. They're making this stuff appear, disappear. Man, if we could get this, they're talking in people's heads. That's what it was all about. It was trying to get the technology, and that's what it's always going to be about, the technology. And it's not going to be, they're going to be trying to stop this from going to the public, because what Walker said to us, curiosity is not sufficient need to know. You don't need to know. Just leave it alone and go do something else. You're wasting your time. You're not going to get the answer. We're not going to give you the answer. And so there's always going to be these infights, no matter who it is, who's going to get led into the game. And I say, as long as the academics and the scientific people are in there, guys like Bob McGuire or like the Harvard University people or whatever, then I'm all happy. But if it stays military, I say nothing has changed. It's just more and more people inside the classified loops, and you need high security clearances, and it's all going to be about weapons and about how to take out Taliban tents and stuff like that. And I'm not interested in that. I'm more interested in the thing, because I say that the UFO phenomenon is a lot more than technology.
Well, and that also shows the push of the military-industrial complex against a changing system politically, Grant.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the whole thing, is when you get into government, nobody really wants to switch. You see that when you get the whole thing. What I always heard, the thing that the Navy was running the show, was because in 1946, when this whole thing really started, there was no Air Force, or say even 1947, there was no Air Force when this thing started. All the research funds went to the Navy. So when the UFO thing and the Roswell thing and all happened, then the Air Force comes in and says, okay, we're in charge of air stuff. You give us the stuff. And they say, get lost. We've got the research funds. We're not giving the research funds. And that was my idea, was why the Navy always ran this thing, because they were the ones that started it, and they're not going to give up. That's why you've got the Navy's got its own Air Force, and the Army had its own Air Force, and the Air Force, and you have all these different groups, and everybody's fighting for the money, and everybody's trying to steal it, as they did with the ATIP thing, where these guys stole their money. It's a big battle. It's a game. And everybody's fighting for their little thing, and they're protecting their turf. And you can't blame them. They all believe that they're doing the right thing, and they don't want to go work at Motel 6. They want to be able to make in their big money and get their cuts and put the stuff. That's what Eisenhower warned, and that's why it scared me with the Congress thing, where Eisenhower in his last speech warned, beware the military-industrial congressional complex. They took out the word congressional, but the whole idea is, once you get this loop going where you got contractors and you've got military people and you've got Congress people, and everybody's taking a cut, like the F-35 jet fighter with the overruns that's made in 46 different states. When it's made in 46 different states, no congressman or senator is going to vote against an overrun. They're not going to say cut it out, because everybody's got their hand in the jar. And that's what Eisenhower was warning about, is you get these groups where there's a pile of money, $740 billion. They're going to go into debt for all this stuff. This is a lot of money, and a lot of people fighting to get a cut of the pie.
All right, Nicole, I want to focus something different on with you here for a moment. Okay, and I know we're jumping all over the place, but I mean, this is what you get when you have unscripted live radio as we speak. Up until this point, Chris Mellon and Lou Elizondo have been seen by many in the UFO community as a part of the burgeoning problem with transparency in ufology because of their NDAs, because they say a lot without saying very much information. Now watching these two, as of today, start to fight and start to verbally show their displeasure in what they heard out of the Pentagon today, does this change the opinion of Elizondo and Mellon and what they're really fighting for come the UAP subject?
my opinion or the general opinion?
Well, let's get both. We're here. We got time.
No, I mean, I think when they get together, they do great things and great things happen, like discs coming out. Like that's what I said, I think earlier this week on your show. I think they have been saying all along that they're ready to do what it takes and they're not going to let up. And as this progresses, they're going to do what they need to do. And I think this is a part of it. But, and especially maybe when we're talking about Mr. Mellon here, these are very civilized people when it comes to this debate and going back and forth. I don't really think, the gloves have come off and they're putting on boxing gloves or taping up. I think this is more of like they're pulling up their little white gloves and getting ready to go. Now it's your turn. So they're kicking the ball forward in their way and they're staying on this. And I think another great article I read earlier this week was Life in Jonestown, Billy Cox, his opinion on all of this. And after he so eloquently ran through all of it at the very end, he said, we're just going to have to wait and see. Like after this passes, after all these new entities are set up and who's running what and who's being held accountable, that's when we really have somewhere to go from. From this point on, we're all going to make our lists. We're going to keep our notebooks. We're going to know what offices to call, who to report to. And if nothing's happening, we have 1 million people with megaphones now, and we'll get this out. It's ultimately up to us. We got to keep stoking the fire and poking the bears.
I would say that I see Elizondo and Mellon at a better light than maybe in the past. I was told back in 2015, 2016, this was going to happen. I wrote it up in March of 2017 in a book, and it does all come to pass exactly the way they told me it would come to pass. So I think a lot of this was planned, that Elizondo and all these guys were going to, I was told high level officials are going to come forward. They're going to say UFOs exist and they are going to force disclosure. So they may be forcing disclosure for, to work on 0 point energy, or they want this out more in the public or whatever. But one of the big advantages of what's happened with Elizondo and Mellon now is if they had not been around, and this announcement had come out, everybody would have been cheering and yelling and saying, hallelujah, we're going to get disclosure. Now you at least have somebody inside who says, hey, this is what's actually going on. So I would say that's the best thing that we've got now is we've got Elizondo and Mellon, who can actually tell you what this actually means. And you realize this is a bait and switch move. And I think it's a fantastic thing where they're going to expose this, and they're probably going to say a lot of things that they never would have said before, where they start to expose and we start to realize that there are these people in behind who may control a lot of information, who are running this operation, and they're now going to be exposed by Elizondo and Mellon.
Well, hold on a second here, because, could this not all of a sudden cause Mellon and Elizondo to lose some security clearance from the military, considering they've taken such a harsh tone towards the Pentagon's reaction today?
Well, that's where Danny Sheehan, I don't know what Danny Sheehan's doing now, but that's where Danny Sheehan comes in, is if you go and there's an inspector general thing where they're saying you're going to pull your security clearance as a threat. I can't see them doing that. According to Danny Sheehan, it doesn't make any sense, where I think this may be with the way that they do it without having to pull a security clearance or fire him, or try to demote him, or whatever they were trying to do before. That this is a way that they grab the narrative and take the power away from Elizondo. But we have the advantage that Elizondo and Mellon know who these guys are, and they're exposing the inside core of these people. And I don't think if that's going on, I don't think they can really touch Elizondo, because I think Danny Sheehan got into that thing. That'd be the stupidest thing they'd ever try, is to try to take a security clearance, because then Danny Sheehan says, okay, now let's have almost like he did with Harvard University. Let's bring in the witnesses. Let's everybody testify. They don't want to go down that route. They want to do it some way where they don't have to confront Elizondo face to face and make it look like they're actually attacking him.
Well, that's probably a good place to end hour number 1 here on Spaced Out Radio. If you haven't heard yet, it's all over the media, it's all over Twitter, that the Pentagon has come out with a new UFO task force, ending the old one and bringing in the AOIMSG. Yep, can't spell anything with that. The Scrabble letters do have a lot of meaning when it comes to this and the UFOs, because this is strike number 1 in the battle of UFOs in the United States. Are you on the government side? Are you on the military side? Grant Cameron, Nicole Sakach, here on Spaced Out Radio as we continue the UFO talk right after this. All right, we're clear.
You know, every time I hear the acronym and it ends in MSG, like my Chevy lights start going off about this, that, and honestly, like the whole MSG controversy was such like garbage. If you really like educate yourself on what MSG is and how it's used, and like, obviously nobody did, because there's still warnings about it, or people like promote that they don't put MSG in their products. And it's just something that's so silly that is still infiltrated in our food culture. And so now like AOIMSG, it sounds like some like weird mutated version of that. And
well, but you're going to miss the good tweet where you can put out no MSG. Shut it down. No MSG.
I enjoy MSG. I use it. I don't think it's bad.
My sister, you don't want to talk to my sister. She thinks that's terrible. It's like
I know
people. She's got headaches and
she's undereducated on it. Just saying.
Another conspiracy controversy. One side versus the other.
Well, it's like, honestly,
I don't even know what it is. I have no idea what it is. It's like
myths out there right now. I mean, we all know it, like MSG equals bad, but it's meat tenderizer as well. So does everybody hate meat tenderizer? Like, I don't know. It's just odd. Chefs never use things how they're supposed to anyway. So, this is fun. That was another segment going on there.
We got some power segments going on.
I keep getting fired up, and then I'm like, no, not that fired up.
Yeah. Well, it'll get heated next week or two. I mean, and that's where the stuff happens, where they'll say more and more stuff, and people will pick up on it and start asking questions. I think it's almost like consciousness. The more you talk about it, it doesn't matter how many bad jokes there are or how many bad things. The more you talk about it, the more it moves down the road. That we're even, last year over this controversy about, groups and who's running it and stuff like that. It's still, people are way more educated than they were back when we thought the government wasn't even working on UFOs. I mean, now we're starting to.
I get a little bit of the feeling too, like, the power of our community and maybe social media is underestimated. We've heard a few people over the last couple of years, like Lou, like Ross Coulter, really like talking about our social media community and what kind of force it can be, especially when mainstream media ignores this topic so often. And it almost makes you wonder, because, we've kind of seen this playbook out of the Pentagon before. Like you said, it was the Navy when the Air Force was formed. And it's kind of that same feeling now. It's like with Space Force being so new, and man, the Air Force and the CIA have just been so quiet throughout all of this. And now
here's a new T-shirt coming to our store, SOR MSG.
There you go.
Thanks, Joe. Remind me of that. Appreciate that.
Oi, MSG.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd like to make a point when we get back on is the idea that it doesn't really matter what happens now. There's two major things that have happened. The major media realized they'd been had, and they picked up on the story. And Congress realized they'd been had. And when you got Congress involved and pushing the issue, and you got the major media, they don't care what they do. It's just a matter of time till it all unravels. They can't keep it going. They were safe when everybody thought there was nothing going on and it was all made up or whatever. You got two pretty major forces that are moving. I even did an article on congressmen and senators who had been involved in the UFO issue, and I think I had them all, but there was not that many. You could not find anybody who wanted to talk about it. Now they all want to talk about it, and all the media wants to talk about it. And as long as that situation exists, you're in a situation where there's no way they can. It just gradually unravel. It's like I say, the blood's in the water and the sharks are circling.
Very true. Very true. We'll get into that. We got about let's see here, 2 minutes.
What happened to the dog?
Mine finally settled down. I don't know.
It's got them aliens coming again.
Did you see that post I did with Tress Blair today? Where she had the foxes. She's one of these people that can feed animals. They come up to her like foxes and deer. She can feed them and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know.
She put the fox thing, and then so I made this joke. I put on her thing. I said, they look like they're standing there saying, put down the camera and bring out the dinner. And then I'm walking to McDonald's down between two fences. And the first time I've ever run into a fox in my life, I go, you can't make this shit up, man. There's no way. You can't make this up. I was just like, look at it, this fox. And he looked at me and he went across and he looked at me as he's walking by. I just could not believe it. Like a couple hours later, I'm face to face with a fox.
I love it. I call that the Disney princess effect. Remember, Grant? I said when people can call in the animals like the birds and the
Tyler D introduced me to an experiencer who can do that. She lives in Florida. She can go out in her backyard and hand feed the deers.
Right.
And they maintain this thing that they have this association with animals.
Hold on, guys. Big thank you to Lori, Dirt Road, G West, Rob, Vash, Pix, Jim, Bob, Marty, and Abe for the super chats. Here comes hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. We want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Obtruncate. Obtruncate is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot, reading Shirky Poo's News Wire, following us on Twitter as well at Spaced Out Radio, on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue the UFO talk tonight. Grant Cameron is here, along with Nicole Sakach. We are all on top of the big announcement from the Pentagon today about a new UFO program called AOIMSG. Their mission? To synchronize efforts across the Pentagon and the broader U.S. government to detect, identify, and attribute objects of interest in special use airspace, and to assess and mitigate any associated threats to safety of flight and national security. Once again, we hear, Nicole, this big-time threat narrative that the military is always so good to have, because the more threats there are, the more money there is coming in. And let's face it, you need an unlimited bank account in order to try and get the threat when it comes from space or interdimensionally or from the future. So, realistically, are we back at the threat narrative again?
did it ever go away? It never went away. So it isn't going to go away because it's a direct link to the moolah, to the money, to the source of the money, to the scare tactics to get the money. I mean, until they move it out of this realm of military anything and truly into like education and science exploration, but how do you get money for that? I mean, is it like a true like world endeavor, like for the betterment of the entire planet? Let's all put our money towards this. I mean, it's very easy for the military to get money when there's a threat, but how do you protect against this threat? What are they wanting to achieve with this? Are we finally going to find out the intent or what they think the intent is? Like, that's what they're saying this amendment is gearing towards. Now we can focus on intent. Well, if we figure out intent, why aren't we just talking to experiencers? They seem to know the intent of these things more than what we've got out of any government.
And if they get the intent, are they going to tell you? Let me go back to the Canadian government. I just put out the Canadian government book about what the Canadian government did from 1950 to 1954. I was in Dayton, Ohio, 1978. I had just interviewed Wilbur Smith's wife, Merle Smith, and Walt Andrews found out that I had interviewed her. And he said, I was very interested in Wilbur Smith, and I want to know, what you ask Merle? What did she tell you? And then he tells me this story that he had met Wilbur, and Wilbur had told him this story. And this may be the intent. Wilbur was in contact with a being by the name of AFA. So was the CIA. So was Navy intelligence. The FBI wrote some documents on this being from 1950 to 1954. This is the one they channeled at the CIA. If you look at UFOs, past, present, future, they talk about this being that was channeled there. And AFA, according to what Walt Andrews told me, had told Wilbur Smith, if there's a nuclear war, we will stop the nuclear war. We can take the moon in front of the entire world, split it in half in front of the entire world, and put it back together in microseconds to prove that we can stop a nuclear war. Other than that, we'll allow the human race to stew in its own juices, which to me, the message is we are destroying the world. Vancouver is about to float away, and you're seeing all these environmental things. That's the message that the beings that people are getting. When I did the tuned in, when I first got the thing where I was given this message, the message is in the music. It was Neil Young's song After the Gold Rush. We're treating the world like a gold mine. When the gold is gone, it's going to become a ghost town, and the silver seeds are going to come and take the chosen ones to another planet. So are they going to tell you this thing that we are destroying the planet? If they know the message is destroying the planet, with the Canadian government was told. And the other is the nuclear weapons, that they really don't care, because what you get experiencers when they get the message is basically like, it'd be a good idea, look at this, look at this environment falling apart. And they really don't say this is going to happen or you should change this. They're just sort of putting this message out, which sort of indicates to me they really don't care. If we destroy ourselves, big deal. You're going to relive your life somewhere else. You're going to keep going and learning your lessons until you learn your lessons. So it's this environmental thing and the nuclear weapons. The whole thing about shutting the nuclear weapons, they're basically saying you can destroy yourselves. You can go out and destroy yourselves. That's no problem. We don't really care about that. But you are not going to contaminate the planet with nuclear weapons. We will shut down the nuclear weapons. We will not let you do it. So if the high-level guy knows the message, and you get this with Chris Bledsoe. If you see the second interview with Chris Bledsoe, where he does the regression, where they do this regression thing in 2012, where he gets regressed and he's getting this message that was briefed to President Obama and stuff like that. When you get this whole thing, if they get that message and they realize the reason they're here is because we're destroying the world and they want the nukes are gone, are they going to tell you that? Absolutely not a chance are they going to tell you that. Because again, all the money disappears. All the defense thing, it's all about money. At the bottom line, it's the number one rule is money. Second rule is money. Third rule is money. It's a left brain, male, game. It's about money. That's all it's about. They're not going to tell you the message if it's not the message they want you to know. The fear message works better in terms of getting money. I think the message is something much different, that if you talk to experiencers, they'll talk about what the message is. And it's not, let's build more nuclear weapons. That's not what the message is.
All right. Jonathan Davies, who's been a guest on this show, runs this guy is like a guru when it comes to getting to meet people in the UFO world. I'll tell you, he has a question here. He goes, if Senator Gillibrand's new amendment is adopted, how soon after do you think, Grant, that Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon leave this UFO community?
I have no idea. Maybe Nicole's got an idea. I have no idea. I mean, I think Elizondo, they're in the community. I think they're major players. I think they're doing what they think is right. They're trying to move the issue along. They are maybe the major players in the biggest story of all times. I think they would see themselves as that they're successful. When you see Lou Elizondo, when he was with TTSA, and then he said, I'm moving to second gear. And that's when they got the money, the Senate thing went through. And I think this has been planned out by Lou, and it's working along great for him. I don't think he's ever going to move out of the UFO community. I think he may turn out to be the major player, the messiah, whatever you want to call it, that actually turns things around. I think he's doing a great job in terms of getting more and more support all the time in terms of what he's saying. And I'm happy with what he's doing, and I can't see him ever turning it down to go do what. I mean, he's the big star right now.
His chin hair is getting a lot whiter. I can tell you that, though.
That happens to everybody who's in ufology. You start getting white stripes here in your hair, and your beard turns white.
Unless you dye. You're not dyeing your hair yet, are you?
No, Grant, I'm not that kind of a lady. I
okay.
don't, no fake hair color, no fake anything else. I don't even paint my fingernails. So
there you go.
No, I'm going to go gray gracefully. I hope I look like, who's the vampire or monster lady with the squiggles. That's my goal. So I'll get there one day. I figured by the time my son turns 21, I'll be completely white. So there we go.
Yeah. You have to expect some sort of backlash. I mean, if you're doing anything, I mean, it's never an easy road. I mean, for people who are achieving big things, there's going to be Max Planck talked about that, who was the father of quantum physics. The whole idea that ideas are never accepted, that science, and I would say ufology, advance one funeral at a time. You have to expect that you're going to get opposition when you are going to try to cut somebody's budget and take away their money and expose what they're doing. I mean, you've got to expect that you're going to get backlash. That's part of the game.
Thank you.
All right, let's get to another question here. Nikki is asking, if the government wants more money, one of my many questions becomes, what exactly are they building, Grant?
Well, they've got the whole idea is that you get inside $740 billion and they don't have a war going. I mean, people will invent all sorts of things. I mean, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. Even like I see it's no different than anything else. It's like every couple of years you get somebody who says, we've got a plan to go to Mars. We're going to go to Mars. I remember I actually showed a newspaper article where they said we will land on Mars before 1975. So everybody's got their proposal. I can take you to Mars. I need $5 billion. Everybody's selling something. Everybody's trying to get a budget. It's like same thing as academia. You're trying to promote your papers because you have to publish or perish. Everybody's trying to make a living, and when there's a lot of money there, you've got a lot of people scrambling, and I don't think they really have to build anything. Everybody's got all sorts of great ideas about who the next enemy is, whether it's the Chinese. Even the Canadians came up in one debate where someone came after the Canadians. It's like, when you're going after the Canadians as being some sort of enemy, well, then it gets pretty desperate. But we can always find an enemy, and we can always find a thing to spend money on. There's not enough money because that's the thing, is everybody's fighting for this money and everybody wants the big budget. So I don't think it's I mean, what you have now is no war and 704. It's like the national insecurity budget. It's like it just gets bigger and bigger every year, and we find more and more threats for why we can spend this money and why we need more money. Even the guy said, because there was a big debate. You saw this debate with this defense appropriation bill, and one of the senators or congressmen said, "This is the most important bill we'll ever do," and he was fighting against that this was more important than building hospitals and was more important than infrastructure. And when you get that sort of thing where there's no wars going on, you put your thing at the top. And when this is more important than infrastructure, you got some pretty serious problems, I think, in terms of your priorities.
All right, I want to throw this out here at you guys regarding the military and everything. Do you think that this entire edition of the AOIMSG is to try and keep the Pandora's box of UFOs and knowledge of what they have under wraps? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, and it's my opinion, they don't want us to know about the alien crash retrievals. They don't want us to know about the aliens. They don't want us to know about what secrets they know technologically regarding this phenomena if they've been able to reverse engineer any of these craft. They don't want to tell us about what happened at Kecksburg or Shag Harbor or any other type of crash area, Grant. So, I mean, it looks to me that even though the politicians may not understand that there is a UFO Pandora's box out there, the military is trying to put as much weight on the top of that lid as possible right now by firing this shot.
Oh, absolutely. It's about who controls the narrative. And that's what I said. What Walker said to us, why should we change the rules? I mean, if you've got it, or even if they find out it's not ET, are they going to tell you that? If they suddenly have discovered where Tom DeLonge goes to the head scientist at Lockheed and he says, how do they get here? How does it work? He says, I think consciousness is involved. And he says, now you're talking. I mean, if it's that kind of stuff where it's completely different or they have no clue, because Elizondo says it, Mellon says it, Jim Semivan says it, they all say it. Yes, there are UFOs, but we haven't got a clue what this thing is. We have no idea what we're dealing with here. If you want to control the narrative until you figure it out, you don't want the Russians figuring it out or the Chinese figuring it out. You want to control the narrative, and that's what they're trying to do is get control after this. They would sort of see it like the scumbag Elizondo went and defected on us and went and ratted us out, and now we've got to get back control of the situation. And this is just a way to get back control of the narrative and stop the leaks from occurring.
Nicole, your thoughts?
I keep thinking back to, like we're trying to create the bad guy here by saying, is it Russia or is it China? They've already been interested in this. They've already have their research into it. George Knapp went to Russia to find out about what was going on in the U.S. Like we've all followed that narrative. So we also have people claiming I just like bringing them up because I know it like incites more conversation later behind the scenes. But Jack Sarfati has been saying for years that the Russians and the Chinese are ahead of us on this. They're already looking into this. Whether they're talking to him about his, how he can build Tic Tacs and how he has metamaterials figured out, I don't know. But we all have heard of ICER in our community lately, and everybody's talking about it. Well, I think this is its third year, and year one, it was in China. Year two, it was in Russia, sponsored by the Chinese. Like they are already abreast on this. They don't need the U.S. government to pursue their own endeavors into this. So it is, in a way, the next kind of space race, in my opinion. And what I would like to see is instead of us continuing this mutually assured destruction line of thinking of, ours are going to cancel out yours or we're all going to die. This topic truly could bring us together globally. And why wouldn't we want it to? If we can't agree on anything else, why can't we just agree on this phenomenon that might bring us together for my great-grandchildren or their great-grandchildren? I don't know.
Because the $740 billion defense budget disappears. If there's no enemy, if the Chinese become good guys and we're all going to work together on this thing, then the money's gone, and it's all about the money.
Think about what all the good we could do if we were spending that money on something else.
But you're not running the show. They're running the show, and they aren't about to give up the money. It's even like there's a joke when we did the whole thing with Peniston about why was Burroughs injured and why was Peniston. So I was doing this whole thing, and I was reading what Kit Green had said. And I looked at this whole connection to the nuclear weapons, where Russia was on the border of Poland, and they were going to reinvade as the Rendlesham Forest thing occurred. And that I was looking, was there this nuclear standoff between the Russians? And Jimmy Carter was writing these letters to Russia and said, if you don't back off, we're going to sell advanced technology to China. And it just changes. It's like, the enemy changes. One day it's this guy, the next day it's that guy. And it's this sort of a game, but it's more the male thing. That's where Chris Bledsoe, if you read the regression, where Chris Bledsoe said it, and a lot of people have said it, it's time for enlightened women to step forward. This is male urinating contest. This is just males fighting and fighting, and you need the women to step forward and take the we over the me. We have to change from separation to oneness. That's the problem we have here, is that we have men running this thing, and it's all about games. It's about the ends justifies the means. It's a giant football game, and who cares how we win? We're just going to win it, and it's a big competition, and that's where the problem is this idea of separation, that we are separate from the rest of the world. So it's a good idea that we all work together. Not even a chance this is going to happen. And that's the part that scares me, is are we going to go off the cliff before we figure this thing out? We're getting more division all the time. You have states dividing. Yeah, I said the United States of America is great. It was great because it was the United States of America. It is no longer the United States of America. Even it's breaking up. And you see this opposition where things are breaking up, and there's more and more people going against each other, and nobody's backing off. And that's male ego, competition stuff. We need women to step forward and change the narrative.
Well, I think in ways that the narrative is changing is we don't want this threat narrative. And I think that is part of what needs to change globally. We put all this emphasis on, like you're saying, those male characteristics of we're big, we're bad, ours are bigger than yours, we're tough, we can take on anything. But it truly, and it's not like a flip-flop of, let's start like appreciating like shopping for handbags or shoes or something or whatever women are supposed to stand for. I think it's more of a, instead of this sports competition type mentality, it's more of like we talk to our art friends and this co-created. It's like, what can we co-create together in our societies, as different as they are? Because in differences you find unity and strength and all of that. So it's just this change, and everybody's at a different level, and until we do mess with the money and start putting it towards things that we truly value as a society.
Yeah. But how do you change that? Because how do you change that? Because the analogy you see that's really bad here is like we lost the war against the Stone Age tribe, and now we're making the claim: you give us enough money, and there's these big bad aliens that are 1,000 or 1,000,000 years more advanced. Give us enough money, and we're going to take them on. Like, seriously? You're going to take them on? We got to learn that we can't win wars with the bigger and bigger guns and bigger weapons, that we have to have another way to do this. The idea that we're going to take on aliens with advanced technology is absolute insanity.
Especially when you do not know what their technological advances are compared to ours. All right.
Or you see what they can do with these special forces guys, where they've said they realized that if they took one more step, and they've never gone on the ranch after 12 years. Or you see this thing with the Cuban thing, which I keep bringing up, was the Cuban thing. The minute they locked on, the guy said the plane evaporated. It just was gone. There was no fire. There was no explosion. The plane just disappeared. That kind of stuff. The idea that we think that we're gonna take this on, that if we get enough money, we're gonna take on the big bad aliens, is absolute male insanity.
All right. Jonathan has a question. Do you even agree? Okay, we got about under a minute yet, but the question is, do you even agree if Gillibrand's law passes, most of the things we want to learn about remain classified? It's still a hashtag dud MSG.
No. It moves the ball. I say it moves the ball. Every time we have something, it moves the ball down the field. I have no problem. I think it's a good thing. The more we have, it's going to be one step at a time, and we're not going to get disclosure overnight. I agree that if Gillibrand's thing goes through, we move ahead.
Nicole, you got 20 seconds.
Yes, I think it's a good thing. I think there still will be a level of secrecy, but that's where we have to dig in and continue fighting the way we do. FOIAs, more people, more governments, more people to watch, more people to follow, more people to talk.
Say the acronym 3 times fast, Dave.
AOIMSG, AOIMSG, AOIMSG. There we go as we go to break.
That's why you're the best. That's why you're the best.
Hey, I didn't butcher it. Spaced Out Radio, UFO Talk, Grant Cameron, Nicole Sakach. We'll take some of your questions if you're in our chat rooms. And we're going to continue the great debate on ufology. It all comes down to aliens, people. Demi may not like it, but I sure as hell do. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. Give me some aliens. Goddamn Debbie.
Don't call them ETs, Dave. Or wait. You're not supposed to call them aliens anymore, right?
Hey, I'm in Canada. I'm in Canada. I don't have to play by Demi's rules. Aliens.
Yeah, you use the word that people understand. That's why I always use UFO when I use aliens. Or when I go to the border, when I come up with Homeland Security and they bring it up, then I say flying saucers. I'm going to a flying saucer convention.
I was going to say the lingo's always wrong. The words are always wrong. Like whether it's ET, alien, ultra-terrestrial,
again, that's
dimensional, higher self.
But that's controlling the narrative. That's the ego. Like, I understand this better than you. I know you just believe, so you have to use my term. And
it's the machine elf. It's the...
Last 2 times I went to San Francisco, I lied. Instead of saying I'm going to speak at a UFO conference, I said I'm going ghost hunting at Alcatraz. Got passed right through.
There you go. Yeah, it's kind of a strange world, but it's exciting. I mean, you got to remember, you should bring this up, Dave. This is still the biggest story that will ever come down the pike. And 500 years from now, when people get regressed, they're going to say, "Oh, I was part of that UFO thing. When that thing was happening, I was there." And then the person will say, "Yeah, sure. Next, you're going to tell us you're Cleopatra." Everybody says they were part of the UFO thing.
Yeah. I'm coming back. I'm going to grow some chin hair like this, and I'm going to say, I was Lou Elizondo.
Yeah. You and 1,000 other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's the biggest game that will ever be played. People got to realize that and enjoy it. I mean, we get frustrated because we're like North Americans. We want everything yesterday. We got to realize it's the game that's exciting. It's a chess game. Enjoy it while you're playing it, and realize that most people are living lives of quiet desperation and haven't got a clue what's going on.
I got to say something. I know we're off the air and YouTube can hear us, and this will be on social media forever. But I'm going to poke a bear here.
Okay.
I really, really wish Nick Pope would have an original thought for once. He is getting paid a ton of money by Fox, by CNN as the UFO analyst, and he says sweet F all each and every time. All he does is regurgitate Elizondo and Mellon's comments. He has nothing more. He doesn't bring anything to the game, and why they are treating him like a UFO demigod with that Velcro hairdo of his, I have no idea. It pisses me off.
It comes down to the thing where I call it the Rodney Dangerfield effect. So we have a situation where everybody's embarrassed that they're in the UFO community. So you get a guy I used to be with PhD. So he's the guy that ran the government program for Great Britain, and that's his thing. So everybody wants this authority, and we do the same thing in UFOs, where you get these guys who are PhDs who come into conferences and they're saying all this crazy, stupid stuff, but it's because a PhD is on our side. Oh, this is guys speaking on our behalf. People are so infatuated with people with degrees and academia and former government people, whatever. I had the advantage that I had this thing where I worked at the faculty club lounge. I said it was the best job I ever had because I realized I dealt with deans and presidents and all sorts of academics with 2 PhDs and stuff, and they're just ordinary guys, and I was never intimidated. But in the UFO community, everybody wants to grab onto somebody. That's why Lou Elizondo is so important, is because he's this big government guy, and everybody says, well, he's on our side, and you feel better because everybody's embarrassed to be in the UFO field, and that's why we keep doing this stupid thing, going back and trying to reinvestigate other UFOs. Get over it. There's UFOs. Let's move on. I mean, it's like people are so...
I'm just tired of them. I'm tired of him. Like, honestly, I want to wash his mouth out with soap just to shut him up. Okay? Like, I'm sorry. Look, I have all due respect for the man. I've never met him, never interviewed him. He's turned down 5 requests from us. All right? Yeah. But, I mean, at some point, Nick, give us some juice. If you are who you say you are, give us some fucking juice. Okay.
But he's got something to lose. You got someone like me, I got nothing to lose. I don't care. I don't need your money. I don't need nothing. And I can say whatever I want. But he's got this whole deal. These respectable government, especially British. You know what British people are like.
Yes.
They're very, very
he's pretty Americanized now. He's not doing tea time anymore. Hold on. Big thank you to Murray, Lori, Dirt Road, G West, Rob, Lori, Vash, Pix, Jim Bob, Marty, and Mennonite Abe for the super chats. It's a great way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. Here we go. Hit that subscribe button. Second half of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out Bumblefoot, reading Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check up on our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on with the UFO talk tonight. Grant Cameron, Nicole Sakach are here, and what a great show it is. If you're just joining us, you're definitely going to want to hear the archives for this. We're going to start off with a question from Pix, who is asking, can we talk about the elephant in the living room? Example, the monstrous split in the UFO community regarding this topic. Grant, I'll give you first dibs here.
This person can't have been in the field very long. It's always been like this. There's always wars. It's been going. I've been in since 75. There was wars then. There's always going to be wars, because what I think it happens is in this field, there is no money. Anybody who thinks that you're making money in the UFO field, except for a couple of people, you're sadly mistaken. There is no money. The only thing you have as currency in the UFO field is your ideas. And that ties into your ego. So there's a lot of ego, and people are throwing around the ideas because there's nothing else to negotiate with. If you're a professor and you're making $135,000 a year and you've got 5 months off a year, you don't really care if the other guy doesn't really agree with you, because you're making $135,000 a year. You just tell it, teach your courses, print your papers. But in the UFO community, that's all you've got is your ideas to fight with. So that's what people fight about. And it's always been that way. Nothing's going to change. And that's a good thing, because it's a situation where my father was a bit skeptical, is in the UFO field, if you're saying something, you got to make sure you got it right, because you're going to get hammered. If you get it wrong, that could be the end of your career. If somebody picks up something that you said was totally wrong or whatever, or you made something up or lied or whatever. So I think it's a good thing. The cream will rise to the top, and I have no problem. But it's always been like this. It doesn't change. There's the other thing that doesn't change. People will come to me and they'll say, my husband and my wife, they just hate it. They don't understand. I said, get used to it. That's how it works. You never have any support in your family. It's never that way. That's the way it's built, and get used to it. Get used to the fighting. Get used to the fact that you're probably going to get divorced over this thing. That's the way it works.
Nicole, the divide this story is causing.
I don't think it's any different than like the status quo, like Grant was saying, in our community. And I think it all shakes out to we're all in this journey, but we're all at different points on the path. So it's like as soon as we all dig further, our network extends and we start thinking differently, or we come together with experiencers and think we figure things out. But I think what we have to remember is, like the rest of the world, we're all earthlings. We're all in this together. We're all part of the same community. And I think those divisions that people like to point out are because it's also what is tweet worthy or clickbaitish, to some extent. But it's also, that good old like drive, Grant and I don't agree on everything all the time. And there's plenty of people in the community that we talk to often and butt heads with. But I think it gives us that like competing edge to like go back to those same people after we do more research and say, well, what are your thoughts on this? I think in a way we make each other stronger with our arguments and our points that we want to get out to the community. So
one thing I'd like to add to this, and that is a lesson I learned back in the 1990s, and that is people will always complain about me that I really don't answer emails or I don't really get involved or whatever. And I learned the lesson that I sort of put out what I put out, and I really don't try to engage with anybody, because I had the experience in the 1990s of dealing with James Ober, who was the big guy from NASA who would debate. And that's when the internet first came on. There was no video, there was no photographs, there was nothing on the internet. All there was these chat boards, and they were big. It was sex and UFOs were the two big topics. And there was alt paranormal UFO and there were all different alt UFOs, alt paranormal UFOs and stuff like that. So I remember one time I got into a debate with James Ober, and he would say something really stupid, and then I would sort of spend hours, and I would get this, compose this thing and fire it back to him. And within 1 minute, he would reply with something else stupid. And then I'd spend hours again, and I would get this big debate, and I'm going after James Ober. And then with 30 seconds, and it would go like that, and it went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then the only thing that I said to him, I said, James, do you actually have a job there at NASA? I mean, you just sit there on the board? Because you could do it at 10 o'clock at night, middle of the morning, whatever. You'd always answer within 30 seconds or a minute or whatever. And I realized this is a total waste of time. And I point this out with Stanton Friedman as well. I went to Stanton Friedman's files, and Stanton would always do the thing where he'd say, oh, I had this debate with, whoever, Shermer or whatever at Oxford University, and 78% of the people believed that I won the debate. But if you look at his actual files and you see all these things with Klass and Menzel and Sagan and all these guys that he argued with, basically what you find out is he didn't win a single argument with anybody. He never convinced Phil Klass of anything. People just move farther. It's like politics. Everybody moves farther into their corner and nobody gets it. So that's my advice, is just don't argue. Just put out what you've got. And it's totally useless to argue. You actually move the people farther away by doing the arguing.
All right, let's get to another question. Armando here wants to know, Grant, do you have any thoughts on the John Burroughs book?
I haven't seen it. I've got a thing with the I bring up about this whole thing about the threat, and this is this idea that and Nicole knows that because she knows Jim Peniston. Read Jim Peniston's book. He lives near here or there, and at one point. Kid Green comes to Peniston and asks for his DNA for the MRI for this study that they're doing. And they're working with 8 scientists and stuff like that. And they're doing all this stuff. And he said, what are you doing? What's going on here? And he said, it's about propulsion. He said, what do you mean, bull? It's about propulsion. And he said, No, we're trying to figure out how does it pop in and pop out? How does it move interdimensionally? Which indicates that Kit Green knows. They know a little bit more than in the back world than what you think they know. But the interesting thing was that he had offered Jim Peniston full disability in exchange for his DNA and for his blood sample, and he turned it down. He said, "I was not injured, and I'm not taking the money because then you own me." So he turned him down. He didn't give him the blood sample and stuff like that. But the question I always to the people that say there's terahertz or injuring you at close distances, if you read Peniston's book, he was way closer to the object when this thing flared up. He was way closer than John Burroughs was. So the question is, why did John Burroughs get injured and Peniston, who was only 20 feet away, didn't get injured? And that comes to this whole thing of there's something else going on that isn't simple distance, because the other guy Kabanzak was there. He didn't get injured. So I always bring that up when we have this whole thing. But
touched it.
And Peniston touched it, and yet he wasn't injured. But people will get upset. But you got to realize it's more complex, because I brought up one time I was within 500 meters, because that's the figure that Kit Green was using, 500 meters. I was within 500 meters 5 times. And the one time I was so close, I was going to jump on it. And I knew that I could get injured. I knew that if you touched it, like the famous Falcon Lake incident, where the guy touched it when it was powered up, I was told that I was told that by another person, that if you touch the craft when it's powered up, you're going to get injured. And so he touched the craft, but he wasn't injured. And yet John Burroughs was injured. And that means that it's more complex, this whole injury thing, because I think Peniston said, I don't even know where Burroughs was. He was all upset. He was all anxious and whatever. And he wouldn't obey an order and stuff like that. So something else is going on other than it's just how close you get to the UFO.
All right, let's get to another question. Trot Dog, who's in our chat room for the first time, thank you so much. Retired CIA John Ramirez is really pushing that humans are hybrids. Do you think he's legit, Grant?
I don't know him. I mean, the hybrid thing is, if you take a look, you can say that everybody's a hybrid. Everybody's part of everything. The experiencers will say that that's their actual family. But I don't know him. I'm always very sensitive of intelligence people who come out and suddenly start to say they're going to tell you exactly what they learned inside intelligence. I've followed the high level intelligence people my whole life. And if you look at Jim Semivan, who is face to face with the beings in his room, he said it shattered his idea of reality. He hasn't got a clue what's going on. So I'm kind of hesitant of people that come forward and have all the answers.
All right. Let's move on to another question here. And this one comes from Glenn. Wouldn't it be easier to increase the military budget with disclosure?
Depends what the disclosure is. That's what I'm saying. If the disclosure is that the beings have told them, shut the nuclear weapons down and you're destroying the planet, there's no way they're going to disclose that. There's absolutely no way.
Nicole?
And then the question is, and I remember with one particular person I had, and we always have this thing when people mention disclosure, what's your definition of disclosure? Because for most people, it's like, I want you to tell me exactly what I believe is going on. The idea of disclosure is elusive because everybody has a different definition of what they think is going on and what they expect the government to give them.
Nicole, your opinion?
It could, I think, but I think what I really see is people are starting to become aware that this leans more towards that shift in how we think spiritually, maybe. So I think that avenue really has nothing to do with the military. So I don't think they would know what to do with it.
Yeah. Or the other thing that is like this whole deal is what is the message they've been given? This idea that these 3 guys at Skinwalker Ranch were told, leave, you are not welcome. Then you get into this whole thing of disclosure where you suddenly realize they've been here forever. And if anybody owns the airspace, it's their airspace. We need to get out of their airspace. I mean, are they going to disclose that? I mean, you can see these problems. I think the disclosure part of the secrecy is they're trying to avoid bringing up things that they know, which aren't going to go very well if you're a guy who's into building weapons.
Very true. very true. But is it about trying to keep this a secret so that way they can get the hands on the technology?
Yeah, they're trying to figure it out. So if it's the old idea, is the Wilson leak document says they have a craft they think they can fly. And that says to me, because I've got 50 people who've flown the craft, and you need consciousness to fly the craft. There's a consciousness interface, and you can have a fully intact craft and you can't fly it because you can't turn it on. You need consciousness to turn it on. So yeah, they're trying to, and you're not going to, I always said it was like a chess, it was like a card game. You are not going to put your cards on the table in front of the Russians and the Chinese in case they have the cards you're missing and they say, thank you very much. And they now have the secret. It's a card game where you hold your cards until you've got it all. And what I'm just guessing, but I'm saying they are so far away from figuring out how this thing works. People think they've got it all figured out. They're flying this stuff around. They ain't shooting anything down. They ain't flying anything as far as I'm concerned. They have no clue. This thing is miles. It's 1,000 times more complex than people think it is.
Nicole?
Ditto.
Power words there from Nicole.
Right? I know.
There.
Oh, I don't have anything to add. That summed it all up.
Okay, so let's go to Jim's question here. Is it not binary the best way to communicate, like Peniston got?
Well, can you explain the question?
Well,
Nicole,
they're saying like communicating like with the binary code, which we hear quite a few things like communicating mathematically, whether it would be the binary code or what is it? What's another one? Like the fine structure constant, or communicating with pi, or what's the spiral one? The Fibonacci sequence. And there's others too. So I mean,
they'll use all sorts of methods. You interviewed Chris Peters, who's Barbara Streisand's stepson. He said when we come into he was told when we come into your world, we go into your head and we find out what's in your head, and that's what we use to give you a message. So if you're in computers, they may use a binary thing. They use channeling. Bashar says, we come to you in your dreams because now you're in our world. They use all sorts of different methods to communicate. It'll be different, but it's all going to be basically the idea that it's all consciousness. It's all basic. There is no nouns. It's all a verb. I think that's part of what it's about, and that it's going to be this telepathic thing, which links into the spiritual thing. It links into near-death experiences. You see all these connections between all these different things: the telepathy, the 360-degree vision, the being inside a building or inside the UFO that is 100 times bigger on the inside than it is outside. You start seeing these parallels. But telepathy, it's consciousness. Consciousness is going to be the bottom of this thing. Binary is just a method that's used in computers, and they may use it to get a message. Or Jim Semivan says they created us and they talk in symbols. Pay attention to the symbols. So when Chris Bledsoe shows when Nicole got the triangle, remember Nicole, when you got the triangle on your wrist, we did the triangle book, and then Nicole got the triangle on her wrist, and then Chris Bledsoe, what did Chris Bledsoe say? Oh, that's not official. When you get this, it's official. And he shows this 24 karat gold, one of a kind, this thing taking off like a rocket taking off inside a triangle. And the impression was it came from Camp David. When you see that kind of stuff, you realize somebody knows something more than just on the basic. And so that's the communication. That's what Jim Semivan said. Pay attention to the symbols. They're using symbols to communicate with. And that is, again, that's female. That's right brain. The left brain is nouns. It's words and nouns and stuff. Right brain is symbols. It's visual. It's all that kind of stuff. And that's, I believe, even the thing where they talk about all the implants are on the left side of the body, according to Roger Lear. And when I started looking at the injuries that the Caleres, Brazil case, where they say, oh, these guys got killed or whatever. When I started looking, the head guy says, the strange thing was all the injuries are on the left side of the body. And you start seeing that and you go, oh, that's a pretty cool trick. Like you see a chest move and it's like, what? It's going, this means something, where the left side of the body, which is run by the right brain, which is the female brain, which I keep going back to this thing that it's this female male thing. It's changing the consciousness and moving to more of a female world where it's all unity and oneness rather than males fighting with each other.
All right, let's get to another question here, because let's get back to the AOIMSG point of this. Where do you think, Grant, the AOIMSG put out by the Pentagon drops the ball?
Well, if you dropping the ball would just be that they're going to be under a lot of pressure now. They're going to have to answer questions. Like you're going to have Danny Sheehan in there. You're going to have reporters asking questions, and these people are exposed. It's the idea where every time they step up, they got to answer another question. And the more questions they get asked, the more they will drop the ball. The more they will say things that they shouldn't say. The more people will dig in and they'll realize this is for real. Now we know who to talk to and put pressure and say, is there a dark group that is withholding this stuff? And that I think that's where they expose themselves as being open, and all sorts of people. And Elizondo is going to point out where their weaknesses are. I don't think they advance anything in terms. This is a desperate move to try to control the narrative, I believe.
Nicole, do you look at what the AOIMSG is saying and just like, man, this is all about covering this up and shoving this subject back underneath the carpet again, where nobody could see it?
Gotcha.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I look at this as kind of that swallowing the key move, so nobody can get through the door. Like, I'll show you. Oh,
yeah.
But I think it's just kind of like them doing their standard playbook. I think by them creating this and how was it put? They're gonna oversee special use areas. I think that's just going to give them another little mound to hide behind, you know. Oh, this is all special use area, national security, can't talk about this.
Yeah, that's where they could hide stuff. But as I said in the one break, I said the situation is that you have a situation where the blood is in the water and the sharks the media knows and Congress knows, and the pressure is on. And it's unraveling at a pretty incredible pace. I don't think you can stop it now. It's just a matter of time. They may have delayed it a little bit. Even in terms of, they might get Congress upset, and Congress decides, okay, we're going to have a hearing. Bring in all these guys who are bring in the Deputy Secretary of Defense, bring all these people and answer questions for us. And then it really starts to unravel.
But how far can it unravel if this gives the military the control to not even give any more videos or any more news or updates to the government officials or the public in general? I mean, we would need another Lou Elizondo type person to try and sneak videos out again.
But that's where we've allowed this. We've allowed them to say this is classified. That's where, like in the first report, the major report, if it was 400 pages and 6 pages were released, that's 1.5%. We allowed that. We said, oh, okay, we'll take our 6 pages or whatever. We're allowing them to hide stuff behind security walls. And unless you change that, I can't see them changing that, because it's that's the way the system is built. Is we just give people security clearances, and the public is cut out. I mean, I have not seen anything except for the Gillibrand thing where there has to be a report for the public. But Greenwald was pointing out that his one reply was that everything is going to be classified. There's going to be nothing that's not going to be classified. We've allowed that in the military security to allow these guys to classify everything, where you can make a request. As I showed on Facebook today, I put the reply to the FOIA from Bob Pratt of the National Enquirer to this Cuban shoot-down thing. And they said, you have no authorization. If this is true, this is classified information. You have no authorization to do. And everybody has to back off. How do you walk around the classification? But we've allowed that system to be built where we have all these security clearances and people hide behind the security clearances. That has to change. I don't know how you change that.
Nicole, your thoughts?
I think this is kind of like they're banking on our maybe the old way of thinking that this topic has like a short attention span, thinking back to like Project Blue Book and how it ended and everything with the Condon report, and then everything kind of went dark again. I think this might be maybe that kind of same play from them. They're like, oh, well, now we have this.
Yeah, but the question is, what happened today? How well did it work? it just blew up.
It didn't, and that's
just going to keep blowing up.
And they bank on the short attention span, but now we have like UFO Twitter.
Yeah, and then they just keep pouring gas on the fire. As far as I'm concerned, every move they make is just another move that opens up more people for questions.
Yep.
We have about 1 minute here before we have to go to break here at the top of the hour. We have Grant Cameron and Nicole Sakach. We'll have them for another 30 minutes on Spaced Out Radio before we turn things over to John Hudson and the Unbiased UFO Report. Quickly, Nicole, when you give an overall view of what happened today, how big is this story overall, do you think?
It's big. It's big to us. I think outside of our community, it's kind of like what was said, when you're talking about everything else that's going on in the world, this is still going to be like third down on the bigness, but I think it's still up to us to stoke those fires and keep talking to people in and outside of our community and drawing attention to this.
Well, it's brought a lot of attention to every major media site today. So that is good news, because once again, the subject, after a brief hiatus, is right back in the thick of things on the mainstream media front. We have Grant Cameron, we have Nicole Sakach for another 30 minutes here on Spaced Out Radio. Both Grant and myself reeling in losses from the Jets and Canucks tanking again. We're playing for draft picks this early in the hockey season. It's terrible. Nonetheless, UFO talk continues in hour 3 of Spaced Out Radio next, so stay tuned. All right, we're clear?
We're clear.
It is all like inching us forward in one way or another, but until we're talking about who's, behind the craft, who's manipulating the craft, if it's AI, if it's ET, if it's future humans, I don't know.
That's where you got to talk to the experiencers. That's where.
Well, we all do. And that's why you guys both know, I fall in that what we're doing now is for the future. And we talk to so many experiencers. We kind of know what they're talking about. And it just so often doesn't align with what's in the pop culture news of our community. It's like in the subculture news of our community.
Right. The next half hour, I really want to, we've touched on it briefly, but I really want to get into the politician side of everything regarding this, because it seems, Grant, you made the comment that more and more politicians are trying to get on board with this. What is the politician's prerogative? And we'll get into that when we come back, okay?
Yep.
Yeah. What are you laughing at?
It's almost time to start campaigning, for election cycles. So, got to get ready. Did you guys see Feinstein's the answer letter today? I thought it was a really good one.
Yeah, I saw it yesterday. I think it was up. Yeah. Yeah, it's a thing where now that's where the attitude has changed. It's sort of like with the media, it's completely shifted where if you talk against it, you're a bad guy. Before it was if you were talking pro UFO, same with Congress now. It's something that you would be sort of reprimanded if you started to poo-poo the thing. Everybody just jumps on the bandwagon and runs with it. Very
true. Very true.
The Canadian thing hasn't caught on yet, though.
No. Waiting. I sent out a tweet today. I did. That's all I could do. Send out a tweet.
Yeah, that's where the Americans are a little bit ahead of us in terms of the drama, and the Canadian is just like who's winning the hockey game, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Plus, it's not tied into the military. Where in the U.S. they're tied it into the military, and that's a very popular topic. Do any Canadians talk about UFOs?
We only hear the talk is happening behind the scenes, but nobody is talking about it publicly. Yeah. And from what I'm hearing from one or two parties, that they have been instructed not to talk publicly about it.
There you go. And yet we've got the thing where I put a little bit in the book about it, how suddenly the Canadian government has admitted they're leaking documents to a researcher. And they've been doing it for 20 years. I knew that 20 years ago because I was told by the researcher what was going on and sworn to secrecy, which I sort of kept and sort of didn't keep. But that's the whole thing. It's like, I mean, are these MJ12 type documents? You know, the government actually gets away with it, that they were leaking documents to a researcher and the story didn't blow up. That they said nothing was going on and they made all these jokes about UFOs and stuff. And yet at the same time, they were leaking documents. There's almost no researchers. Forget about politicians. There really are no researchers in Canada. There are new UFO conferences. It's just not a big topic in Canada. It's from what I can see.
Very true. I made a nice Nick Pope meme for everybody here, so just bear with.
What you got to do with Nick Pope is you got to get into a conference with him, go to the bar with him, and then he talks. After he's had about 6 or 7 wobbly pops.
The last time I tried to get to know people at a UFO conference, I sat at the table for 15 minutes, and not a single person said hello. Not a single fellow speaker said hello to me at that table. So I got up. I got up with
Nicole.
My beer.
He likes girls. You take Nicole to the bar with you, and I can tell you, I won't say, but I mean, if anybody ever got Nick Pope, sometimes he would there'd be some trouble because he likes to drink, and he's a different guy when he drinks.
Look at that Brillo pad hairdo.
There you go.
I'll tell you, if him and Joe Mergia ever accidentally bonked heads, it'd be one hell of a fight to get them apart.
So you have to say you're connected to the Canadian government UFO thing, and then you'll get all the gigs on Fox and stuff like that.
True.
They don't care about radio hosts. They just care about guys who ran UFO desks.
I like both of their hairdos, and I think everybody's beard looks exactly like Nick Pope's head hair. So
there you go.
I'm going nowhere near Nick Pope then, because I'll get stuck to him.
Yeah, I put you in your place there, boy.
Nick Pope is a tiny man, kind of like I'm a tiny woman. I have 3 drinks and I'm going to spill all my UFO secrets too. I think Laughlin, Nevada found that out back in June.
You have to give Nick Pope some of your beard stuff.
It'll straighten that right out. Hold on, guys. Big thank you to Pix ×2, Murray, Mennonite Abe, Marty, Jim Bob, Vash the Impaler, Lori, Bigfoot Rob, G West, Dirt Road, and Lori for the amazing super chats tonight. It's a great way to support this show. Don't forget you can shop for some SOR swag on our website. And if you're new, don't forget to hit your thumbs up and subscribe. Here we go.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Here we go with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us as we're broadcasting live from SOR headquarters in the mountains of British Columbia. Hi to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Obtricate. Obtricate is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as a clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. For the final time tonight, Nicole Sakach and Grant Cameron are with us talking about the latest in the UFO reports and UFO news. The Pentagon releasing the AOIMSG, a great acronym to replace the UAP task force. Much easier to say and much easier to spell out UAPTF. But nonetheless, they want to keep secrets, apparently, allegedly, because of national security. And we're going to continue on with the talk. Grant, Jonathan Davies makes a good quote here. He said, Hal Puthoff said to him, or said at the SU conference, nothing of importance will ever be released. Not a hope in hell. Senator Gillibrand or not. What's your thoughts on that, Grant?
Well, if Hal Puthoff says it, you should pay attention to it. Hal Puthoff is probably one of the guys that knows who the 12 guys are and really can't say anything because nobody will talk to him. I think he's a key guy to listen to. I agree. That's what I say. It may not be what people think it is. I think it's going to be this idea of nuclear weapons, of environmental devastation, of the fact that they're running the show. Things that no politician is going to step out and say. So I agree. And you're not going to put your cards on the table. It's and the other thing that I forgot to mention was you talk about this invisible college who are also doing the secrecy thing. So what you've got is one UFO invention went for $100 million on NASDAQ, the company. You have guys who are trying to get patents. If you have a patent, Dave, and you're very close to getting a patent on UFO technology, are you going to go public with what you've got? Absolutely not. There's all sorts of vested interest in behind the scenes of people who don't really see any reason to talk about it. Or if you talk about it and you don't have the whole picture, nobody will talk to you. It's called intelligence blowback, where nobody will talk to you because you went and talked about something you shouldn't have talked about. No, I agree but I think it's more the thing that either they don't know anything about what's going on, or the stuff that's going on is not going to fit into national security, and it's going to be stuff where they have to admit, they want us to disassemble the nukes and stuff. They're not going to do that. Everybody's covering up for a reason. Everybody thinks they're saving the world.
True. Nicole, I want to ask you, because a lot of the politicians recently, since Marco Rubio and Mark Warner opened up this subject, earlier this year, they are starting to jump on the bandwagon of this entire UAP phenomena. What do you think is scaring these politicians or intriguing these politicians about this subject? Obviously, we don't know what they've seen, what they've been read into, but we can only assume that something has happened significantly to make this a hot button topic amongst American politicians on both sides of the ledger.
Well, I think what keeps jumping to my mind right now is Chris Mellon, the way he says UFOs are real. They're here. They're operating with impunity. And I think they've been privileged to maybe see the videos that we haven't seen, that Lou has alluded to, that are in high def, that are crystal clear. And I know all of us that come at this from the experiencer side, we know that when you witness these things or interact with the phenomenon, it's a life-changing thing. And I think maybe for these congressmen who've been briefed in and have seen this, it's kind of been their wake-up call that this isn't the path that they've been told, that we're all tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy drunk crazies or something, that this is real. And I think that's a hard pill to swallow if you have a certain spiritual background in this country.
Very true. But Grant, is this a popularity feed right now for national security by these politicians? Or do you think that they have learned something that would blow their minds off of the citizens of not only the United States, but the world as well?
Well, the whole option was, as I said, Tom DeLonge, they were in front of the Armed Services Committee in 2017 already. So they went in, this was all intended. That's what he said, that Semivan had said that they were there. They were convincing. So what happens is you get in front of the Intelligence Committee or the Armed Services Committee, and you convince these guys this thing's for real. You get a briefing through Mellon or however this happened, and these two guys come out. So you get the head of the Intelligence Committee, a joint statement by the Republicans and the Democrats, and they say, yeah, this thing's for real. What are you going to say? If you're everybody else on the committee, it's like, bah. Everybody just going to repeat what was said, and nobody argues it. It's almost like the New York Times. One person of authority says, yeah, this is for real. I believe this is for real. And everybody just goes along with it. So that's was the shift, was that you had the head of the Armed Services Committee, the head of intelligence, and from both parties basically saying, yeah, there's something to this, and then buying into this national security thing. That, yeah, we should look at this for national security, and nobody's going to argue national security. If the head of intelligence comes up and says this is an issue for national security, we should be looking at this, everybody just falls in line. It's the old idea that you're not going to buck that. And as I pointed out before, it almost looks like you're the crazy. If you say, no, I really don't believe UFOs, that the Intelligence Committee doesn't know what they're talking about, you look like the crazy guy now. It completely shifted overnight, almost like the New York Times, from one day to the next. It completely shifted to the attitude where the people for were the smart guys and the people who were against were the crazy guys.
Do you think the politicians really want to know about extraterrestrials or where the Tic Tacs are coming from? Or is this all political posturing?
It's political posturing, but it's again, it's like the same thing as everybody else, where they're interested. It's not their main thing. They're interested in finding what's going on. And when you bring up national security, then they really get interested because they're going to be patriotic and they go down that road. But no, I think it's like the general public that I'm sure they're not like you and I, where they, are down the rabbit hole and, we make people's eyes roll back in their heads when we talk to them. I think they have the same thing with us, that they're working on different stuff. It's just they've seen stuff and they have made these public statements, and it's shifted the whole attitude. Before, it was cool to be looking down on it. Even where I told the story where the first time it came up in the Clinton administration was when Webster Hubble came forward in 1997 in Friends in High Places. And he did this book where he said, Bill told me to go out and look at UFOs. And I went and I tried to find out what was going on. And so the question was asked in the White House press room by Deborah Orrin, who was with the New York Post, which is the conservative. So she was not big friends with the Clintons. And she said, is it true? Did Mr. Clinton tell Hubble to go out and get this? And the press secretary walked around it. And then she said, is it true what Webster Hubble writes in his book? And he said, we're not going to comment what private people put in their books because he's no longer in the government. And Deborah Orrin said, I sat there and waited for the rest of the White House press corps to step in and ask a question. And they all rolled over and played dead. That was the attitude before. You wouldn't dare take your press credentials and put them on the line to ask the stupid UFO question. Now the UFO question is the cool question. It's no longer the stupid question.
No, it's not the stupid question, but there is a harsh reality to this. Whether it's the U.S. government has been contacted by extraterrestrials and a date has been set for some sort of disclosure, whether it's something along the lines of political posturing, or whether it's along the lines of trying to break the military-industrial complex. There's a lot going on, and if this whole project politically by Senator Gillibrand is bipartisan and supported by both parties down there, does this not mean that there may be a little bit more to this than what we're really understanding?
Well, I think what you got to remember with the Senate and the Congress is that these guys haven't got a clue what's going on. The only thing they've heard is what they've been told by Elizondo and Puthoff and Eric Davis and all these people. They're the same as you and I. They're trying to figure it out. And they're up against the black ops people as well. They're trying to get in there. So they're in a situation where they're sort of helpless, that everybody thinks, same thing with the professors. Everybody used to think that professor knows everything. And I always used to say, the guy may be an expert on astrophysics, but don't get him to fix your car. He has no clue. So congressmen have only a little bit of interest and based upon what they've been told, but they are, I think, in the same position as you and I, that they're trying to break through the wall as well. And they're being cut out with this new move is to keep it away from Congress, where it's a battle between the people that have it's not the government, because you mentioned the word government. Is it the government, or is it somebody inside the government who was not elected? Like what's his name? Dick D'Amato used to say. He was very furious when he told Jesse Marcel, I just want to let you know this is true. There's a black operation in the government that has all the money and they have all the hardware. And I'm just here to find out how much the security is costing. The Congress, I think, is in the same position, where they realize, or even where the Senate Appropriations Committee, when Area 51 broke, Senator Byrd from the Senate Appropriations Committee said to his guys on the committee, said, hey, are we doing UFOs at Area 51? And they said, oh, we don't know. And he said, well, if we're doing UFOs at Area 51, they're not telling us what's going on. And that's why they sent Dick D'Amato to Area 51 to find out what was going on. They don't know what's going on either. They're trying to figure it out. So when we do the government, we always have to define who are we talking about with the government. I don't think with this black ops thing, I think it's sort of broken away from the government. It's this, whatever they want to call it, this runaway, group or whatever. And the Congress is trying to rein them in as well. What do you think, Nicole?
I agree with that. I do think it's, I think we focus a lot on the military aspect of this and the secrecy. And I think that's why, like, when we think back a few months ago, like Weinstein's big comments, about why isn't this in academia? Why aren't we bringing this to our top scientists? Why aren't my friends being talked to about this? And I think when you talk about congressmen, using this narrative, I think, yes, it's very easily aligned with the military. But I really don't think we are going to get anywhere until we start funding things like the Galileo Project, or till we start throwing money behind things like Mitchell's Free Foundation, or for that matter, Opus. When is this going to get so far along that we realize it's not a military problem? It's a science, educational world problem. And that's where we're finally going to get answers.
Well, you brought up Avi Loeb and the Galileo Project, and they had a scientist today actually quit from them in Chris Cogswell. I don't know if that really hurts him or not. He was only an associate, and he's never, I believe, according to Bob McGuire, ever written any type of formal paper on anything for peer review. So I don't know if that really hurts Galileo Project or not, but the Galileo Project continues to grow, and I was really impressed, last week when Avi Loeb took on the members of SETI and basically told them to stuff it, because they don't know what they're talking about when it comes to the research or the experiencers themselves in the UFO community when they were trying to poo-poo the knowledge that this community has.
Yeah. Well, what you have to remember is that the Black Ops, whoever runs this thing, has control. And you're only going to get information if you have something to offer them. They don't bring you in for curiosity or to share the message. They bring you in. So they're basically controlling it. I can't see how these guys are going to break into that sort of world where it's this compartmentalized world where they control everything. And they're basically going to be the same as you and I. They're going to be dealing with stuff on the street, with rumors and stuff like that. You need to be inside where they've got the information. And I just cannot see these guys, especially when you get into classification. You need a need to know to get in. And unless you have a need to know, as Walker said, why should we change the rules to satisfy your curiosity? We're just not going to tell you, and get lost.
Very true. Very true. Nikki?
Was there more?
I'm just wondering if you had a comment.
Didn't I start the comment?
Well, in regards to Avi Loeb and the Galileo Project and their team of people, which is ever shifting, more added than subtraction, how much of an impact do you think this entire group is having on their pro-UFO and experiencer stance, and in regards to supporting the UFO community?
I think it's almost the reverse. I think that Avi knows he needs the UFO community's support. He didn't get it from his counterparts at first, you know? And I think those of us in this long enough all know that this started as an outside in the stars search. So I think that's part of Avi Loeb's project here. And I think what sets it apart from SETI is that they are bringing in people from our community. It's not just this like Sagan approach of you guys are all lunatics. We're doing this the scientific method way, you know. So at least he's a friend to the community. He might not know all the ins and outs and pockets and rabbit holes, but you know.
He raises the consciousness of the whole thing, makes it more acceptable to talk about it. Whether he's going to get anything of any significance or whatever, or he's going to be stumbling around. Because again, you need a classification to get the material that everybody's looking at, and they're just not going to bring them into that world. So yeah, he's raising the consciousness and putting pressure, the same as the media is putting pressure, same as Congress is putting pressure. And it goes back to this idea that people, if you've been in as long as I know, you know that this has changed dramatically. I remember there's a conference. I tell this funny story. I was at one of the X conferences that Steve Bassett was putting on. And to give you an idea how far we've advanced in the last 4 years, there's no way I ever thought this would happen. A lot of people have been in a long time, say they never believed we'd get as far as we got, how this thing has shifted since 2017. Steve Bassett had a thing where he said to all the people on the stage, we were on a panel, and he said, okay, so when do you think disclosure is going to take place? And this was like 10 years ago. And everybody said 6 months, 1 year. And I said 2041. And he looked at me like I just stuck a knife in his chest. Like, how could you possibly say that in front of all these people? And because I believe there's no way nothing's ever going to get disclosed. I am absolutely shocked at what has happened in the last 4 years. And I think it's moving at a great pace, especially you got Congress, you got the media, you got everything rolling. I think enjoy this. I think this thing is going to unravel, whether you're going to get the real classified material or whether the experiencers will get a voice in this thing, but people don't have any idea. Especially people who just got in it as this thing started. They have no idea what it was like. There was nothing. Nobody believed anything. You couldn't move an inch. We've gone 1 million miles since 2017. 1 million miles.
And I would agree with you on that, but the 1 million miles has also had a lot of blockages with the creation of the UFO narrative, which we still have to forewarn the public about, that is still in full force, Grant.
Yeah, but Max Planck says, as science, and I say ufology, advance one funeral at a time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. Everybody's waiting. When is the government going to disclose? And it's like, it's going to be a gradual thing that's going to take many years. You're going to get little pieces. But if you look back in 2017, we didn't even believe the government had a UFO program. Now we've got all this stuff. Now they got programs and they've got all the different names on it and stuff. And we've heard about videos and stuff like that. There's a pile of stuff that I never would have believed this would happen. Any of this, that we would have got the videos or an admission that they were running a program. We used to have the joke. I wrote an article called The 64 Reasons They Decided Not to Tell You the Truth. And one of the things was Stephen Greer used to put out the fact that when they disclose that they've been lying to you all this time and that there's a UFO program, the stock market's going to melt down. And I believed it. Everybody believed it. It's like, oh, the oil's going to be worth nothing and everything's going to sell down. Well, what happened when 2017, when the New York Times broke the story? Absolutely nothing. Everybody went, yeah, I knew that already. Okay, get the next thing. And that's what it is. It's climatization where it gradually, and people are going to say, oh, it's actually ET, it's actually extraterrestrial, there's actually beings in the craft. And everybody's go, yeah, okay, now give me the next thing. I know that already. We're just this acclimatization. We don't realize that people are being acclimatized. People are being brainwashed. The fact that the attitude is changing. But and if Max Planck had it as the father of quantum physics, who said, talked about this fight back that people had against him and the opposition that he had, and that's all now accepted. We have to do the same thing, that we can't expect everybody to sort of roll over and play the game with us, or the government's going to suddenly throw up the white flag. They're going to fight to the bitter end. But basically, I am saying that this thing is moving a lot faster than I ever thought it would move. I am really shocked.
Nicole, what do you think? We got 2 minutes left. What's going to happen in the next few days coming out of American Thanksgiving and into the weekend, and then, of course, getting ready for December and the run to the holidays? How do you feel this is going to turn out in the next week or so?
Oh, I think as more people tune in and read this latest burst of mainstream media articles and coverage and listen to this show, I think the conversation's only going to get bigger and wider. And I think more people are called into action. Over the last year, I mean, how many times have you called your congressman or written a letter or an email to him? Like, I've been so activated. I thought I was activated before. I'm more so now. So I'm waiting for my second round of emails to come back. So yeah, and it's just going to go more and more. And you brought up like 2017 and the New York Times. Like, I ventured out to people specifically and was like, New York Times, did you see with it? And they all like blew it off. And now those same people are now coming to me like, I saw the New York Times. It's on Fox News, so it's spreading. The word is getting out there and we just have to keep playing our part.
I'll tell you what's going to happen. In the next week or two, Elizondo is going to give 5 interviews and he's going to pour gas on the fire and blow the place up. That's my prediction.
That would be great.
Because you get Elizondo upset. I mean, Elizondo, he'll sort of talk in rhymes and riddles, but he's unlike your dispute with Nick Pope. Lou Elizondo's saying stuff when he talks.
That's what I'm saying.
He may not be saying it directly, but he's saying stuff.
Absolutely. Grant Cameron, Nicole Sakach, absolutely love you guys. Grant, thank you so much for being a wealth of knowledge and a mentor to myself, even though you cheer for the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, but that's another argument right there. Nicole, thank you for being who you are and being such a blessing to this show as well. We're going to continue this UFO story tomorrow night as we continue on. But first, we got to finish up here. We got the UAP report with the fedora-wearing John Hudson, and then Shirky Poo's news. A jam-packed final half hour of Spaced Out Radio next. Coincidentally, about an hour into the show, I found out my guest tomorrow night has had to come down with really bad sickness and had to cancel and reschedule. So now I got to plan a UFO show for tomorrow night too.
Maybe Elizondo will come on.
No, lovely Lou won't bring his chin hair on here on Thanksgiving. I got to find some Canadians who will come on. Maybe I could get somebody who's giving Rutkowski all the UFO info.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. There's not many Canadians around that. You might get what's his name, Victor Vigiani. He's about the only Canadian.
No.
Well,
you'll find somebody.
You're out of Canadians then. That's all the Canadians you got.
Put it this way. I love Victor. I really do. But I'm on timeout with him right now. He doesn't know it.
Okay.
He doesn't know it yet, but he's on timeout right now. You know what? I'll tell you what happened. Okay? I respect Victor a lot, and him and I have had some damn good conversations over the years. But it really bothered me when we did the Paul Hellyer special, Grant, last time you were on.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Him and Bassett, a couple days later, went on another podcast that I'd never heard of. All right, and I'm not trying to sound like sour grapes or anything like that, but every time I've been on or I brought Victor on, he always says how proud he is to come on the show, loves the show, great Canadian show, all this kind of stuff, but he never shares it. He'll always share other information, even though there's information that I've given him, right? So a couple of other guys, never heard of them, do a show on a tribute to Paul Hellyer as well a few days later. And both Victor and Steve were all, bragging about how wonderful of a tribute it was to be a part of a tribute show for Hellyer. And never once did they mention that they were on our show. Right? And did that. And this is part of the reason why I've kind of pulled out of the UFO community, is that I'm kind of done with being, giving everybody airtime, and nobody could even take the chance to say a quick thank you and a share of the show. I mean, it sounds selfish, it sounds rude, it sounds whiny, but at some point I got to protect my brand too, right?
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying, yeah.
So, no more airtime for a while. No more.
So you're done with the UFO community, like everybody?
No.
Like you're...
No, I'm not done with the UFO topic. I'm done with many in the UFO community, right?
You have to be. You'd be like me, where you just post and you don't get involved.
Yeah. So I mean, I've got my circle of trust, and that's kind of what I'm banking on right now, is the circle of trust. There's a lot of people that I have high respect for in the UFO world, and that's kind of what I'm going through right there, and just hanging out with that.
Right? Yeah, I don't have any circle of trust. I tell everything. I have no secrets.
Well, I know you don't.
Now, eventually you tell him. I would say you can sit on him for quite a while, if we're being honest here.
And then indirectly.
You can sit on him.
Hey, our buddy Michael Hall is still milking the Wilson leaks of the century.
Is that right? He wants me to write the forward. I started it and then I didn't. I sort of stopped, but
Are we still considering it the leak of the century now that we've had so much more news since? Or did it
sort of died out? All the stories die out.
Yeah, I don't know. Titles that stick. I don't know.
Even the Kid Green. That's the thing that I put out, the Kid Green tape, which is absolutely dramatic, and I thought it would go somewhere. I put out the thing with Tom DeLonge today, saying that he was told to put the ugliest stuff he could possibly find in front of the Armed Services Committee, and I got like 20 people read it. It was like, I couldn't believe it. It's like, I thought it would blow up. It didn't do anything.
So who do you think is talking to the new writers of Star Trek with this new reboot of Star Trek, the series Discovery? I was telling Dave this earlier, Grant. So before we go, I'll fill you in on it.
You guys can stick around.
We brought up Kit Green and how he chases down the propulsion of popping in and out. Well, the newest version thrown into Star Trek is not only do they have this faster than light warp drive, but the new ship has a spore drive.
Hold on, Nicole. I guess you guys are sticking around.
It pops in and out.
Here we go. We rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. I want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot. Shirky Poo's got the news. And what else do we got? Oh, yeah, our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Yes, we still got Grant, we still got Nicole, but we are being added now with the fedora-wearing John Hudson and the unbiased UFO Report. Here we go. All right, Fedora. It's a big night here on Spaced Out Radio, of course. All the big UFO news coming on down. We still got Grant and Nicole hanging on out with us. What do you got for us, John?
Well, I mean, needless to say, I don't know if you guys have heard about this one story that everyone seems to be talking about, but it's actually kind of catching on. But I don't know if you guys heard about this this large prank that went on in France. Do you guys hear about this?
No.
I'll send you the link right now, Dave. But basically, this guy went all out. This guy like this guy's a special effects artist. Like he went all out and like did like a full on, alien display. Like he had a costume and a ship and everything, and so my question basically came down to for something like this where the guy wasn't taking a known event and blowing it up, right? He wasn't taking a random event and turning it into something it wasn't. He created a completely fabricated event, right? It was a big production thing for him. There was an ending to it where he basically said, yes, this was me, this is look my ship and so forth. Have we reached a point of maturity yet where that will go over okay yet? Or is that still like so for Paul, so bad news, like it we're still decades away from being that mature yet?
I don't know about anybody else. I'm not.
I think,
honestly,
I would say that this kind of stuff is actually very popular because everybody always believes that ufology is going to be solved by the next UFO sighting that comes along. So when you had the Jerusalem video, you have all these videos. When everybody gets the video and then it passes around, everybody shares it or whatever, and then as someone yells hoax and everybody runs for the hills, and then they go, okay, wait for next video. And next video or the next sighting comes on. Did you see that sighting? And everybody gets all excited, and then somebody poo-poos it, and it goes on. And that's, I think, one of the problems we have is everybody thinks it's the next sighting instead of the fact that we may already have the answers. So it's very easy to hoax people in terms of a new video because everybody's looking for the new video to share to be on the disclosure event.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think it's almost worse in cases where you have videos that were real and they sit and linger for a long period of time. No one successfully shoots any one of them down. Maybe there's some hard questions posed that couldn't be answered, but it sticks how it is, and it just sits there forever, and then it fades out of people's memory, and it becomes known as a bad data point. It becomes known as a bad hoax file when it wasn't. No one ever called it out as good. It only gets called out as bad, or you hear nothing. It very rarely does anything ever actually get called out, blessed as this is actually good, good data. I mean, even in the cryptid world, like you guys have a huge problem with that. I mean, we don't have any declarations of this. We agree. This is consensus. We agree on this.
Yeah. And it comes to that opposition thing. So people will say the Tic Tac videos were all blurry. And does anybody ever take a good photo? And then you get the Meyer photos from 1975 and they say, that's totally phony. I mean, look at that. It's clear as a bell. You just can't win. I mean, it's like it's either too clear or it's not clear enough.
Yep. No, totally agreed. Totally agreed.
What else you got for us, John?
Yeah, so I mean, needless to say, this whole Gillibrand bill thing is a hot topic and would have been a hot topic completely on its own without what the DoD is doing, just because of the fact that we're seeing, I believe that there are now 5 sponsors on the bill, on the amendment. There's more and more people talking about it. I mean, I can't believe I have a list I'll include in my notes of all the different periodicals that have written about. Grant looks like he's selling furniture. Sorry, I got totally distracted what I was talking about. But you basically have a number of different periodicals that are writing good serious articles about this Gillibrand amendment and what's in it, and they're breaking it down at different levels with their perspectives, and so you're seeing the different perspectives, and some of them are military slanted, some of them are history slanted, some of them are political slanted, and it's actually getting wide coverage. And so that to me is just I gotta admit I'm a little surprised, and I'm pleasantly surprised. I was a little worried that this amendment might kind of die on the vine. And I'm really happy to see as much interest and support for it as we are seeing. I know none of you are really kind of necessarily into the American politics, but I mean, considering what we've seen happen to other amendments, did you guys have any confidence that this latest amendment would actually be the one that went forward?
I hadn't come across any opposition to that portion of the amendment, so I wasn't really in fear of anything that was going on. I mean, the change from, what was it, Arrow to Astro, I mean, that didn't seem to be like any source of contention or anything. And now it's AOIMSG, which, it was just terrible.
All these amendments and all these things that they proposed in the last couple of months all seem to be something where they don't break down to be Republican or Democratic issues. They don't seem to have had any opposition to any of them. People just sort of tack them on, and it's not like socialism or communism or capitalism.
Yes,
like,
but unfortunately, it's still the reconciliation process of bringing the House and the Senate bills together. Things do end up falling onto the floor, right? And so you do always have to be very mindful of when one side actually comes out with really strong language. And it's like, wow, like you guys actually did your homework. Like, and her amendment is beautiful. I mean, it's really it's so well written that you could actually use it as a framework to start actually building out an organization. Like that's how well. I mean, whoever helped her with that, they've built large orgs before. Like that's a well flushed out plan that she's put together, and whoever helped her.
Well, that was the idea that Mellon had helped. That's what I heard.
Right.
And that may be
That's
true.
what I was hearing.
Well, I heard Mellon might have had some help. We heard that that some of the language in it appears to have been lifted from an article that that Science Bob wrote a couple months ago. So I think she just, I'm sure. I mean, like a senator her level has a huge staff that support her, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times those staff are top-notch people, right? So she's got a whole team of people.
I think we have to remember that congressmen and senators don't write any of their bills. They're always written for staffers. So maybe we can start a rumor and say Science Bob was involved in the background.
But what's interesting about this grant? What's interesting about this grant is that this is one of the problems we have in the U.S. is how things have evolved. Is now over time. Now, pretty much the only people that write bills are the actual vendors, right? So it's like so like the armed services guys will get Lockheed to actually write the bill, right? So they'll actually write the bill for them, or Gain or Paxil or whatever company, they'll actually write the bill for, and the lobbyists or the legislature are like, well, it'll save us time, so we'll take the work. But who writes a UFO bill for you? Nobody. So those are labors of love. Those are things that people are actually still writing themselves.
Yeah, I give you an example. When I spent a lot of time on Reagan's speeches as to how things got in Reagan's speeches, and Deborah, what was her name? One of his big speechwriters. She talked about the fact that a State of the Union address has been drafted 30 times, and that everybody has to sign off on it. So CIA, defense, everybody has to check off on it, and every single word is checked. Every little thing is checked in there. And she said it was. She had a swear word for it. She says when the thing was finally done, she would leave the office because the phone wouldn't come off the hook, and it was like, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" It's like people screaming and yelling at her, and people don't realize how many times these things are drafted and how everybody has to sign off on it to approve it. So there's so many people in the background. People don't realize how orchestrated this whole thing is, and the senator takes the credit for it, but there's people in the background that are doing it.
Oh, for sure.
And that's where, to bring up, like I brought up earlier, again, Kit Green commenting on the language that's in this bill. Mellon has commented on the language that's in this bill and kind of signed off, giving his approval.
Right, and we don't know if these are people who are just intelligent, well-read people on their own that are reading it and commenting on their own, or is one of them like put off for someone calling up his buddies and saying, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Hey, we all, we should all support this because this is good for all of us, right? It doesn't have to be conspiratorial. It can be just friendly, bannerment sort of a thing, right? But it's you can certainly see why it'd be in everyone's benefit to speak up if you have something positive to say. But I would say that the last thing that's probably the biggest interesting issue is just what the DoD tried to do, and I was listening to a couple of different shows on it today. I was listening to you guys talk about it a little bit, and there's a lot of people that feel that what this was the DoD essentially putting up their dukes and starting to fight back as far as what's going on, and I can see how someone could take it that relate to take that understanding. And for anyone that isn't, really aware of what I'm talking about, essentially the DoD released in a press release today that they were already putting together a program that looked kind of similar to Gillibrand's fantastic program, but with a lot of stuff missing and a lot of holes in it. And basically, tried to present it like, hey, look, we're already doing this sort of a thing. And there's a whole bunch of debate as to why they would be doing that sort of thing. And, to a certain degree, I think that, we shouldn't always read negative things into it. It could be that they're trying to cover their backsides, right? They're trying to start getting in some of their framework requests in early in a framework like this, so that they actually walk up to the negotiating table in a better position, right? I mean, it may just be marks, kind of sportsmanship on their part. I don't know if I would really take it necessarily as them being really, intentionally shish kebabbing the whole program, because if you were doing that, you wouldn't come up with an acronym like that, because you'd want the DoD program to succeed, right? You'd want the DoD program to succeed where the congressional program didn't, and so you'd want the DoD program to actually have a acronym that was actually like catchy, right? And so the fact that they picked such a ridiculous. I come from an industry that did PCMCIA, okay? PCMCIA was an actual acronym people were expected to remember. No one did. And so I get it. I understand acronyms, but these are ridiculous. Like these are so bad. These are so bad that we're lucky that UFO topic isn't like a big news item, because people on late night television would have a freaking field day on this stuff. It is ridiculous the way the acronyms are set up. So I totally understand why. But so my point is that I understand a lot of what people are saying, but I think there's a good chance that this is more sportsmanship on the part of DoD, basically trying to get themselves into a better positioning place on the table. I think it was certainly them firing back a little bit to a degree, but I don't think it necessarily should be seen as this super negative deriding sort of thing. I think if for some reason, if their proposal caught wind and got dominance of support over Gillibrand, yeah, that'd be awful, because what they wrote in their proposal, the limited thing that's there, it pales in comparison to what we have in the bill. But I don't know if I would take what they did as so negative as much as it was just political marksmanship.
But as I pointed out before, we would have never have thought it as being negative until Lou Elizondo came out and hammered it today. So he's basically turned the tables upside down on them. But it'll still be a consciousness thing, because every day my mother says on the news, and she watches a lot of Fox News, she goes, they were talking about UFOs today on the news again. I can't remember the guy's name. I think. And every day it's the same story. They were talking about UFOs on the news today. And so even though people aren't picking up the acronyms and are picking up, it's right. This idea that it's in the news cycle all the time. Almost every day they're running a story. And people like my mother, who really don't know what's going on, are picking up that something's going on. This UFO stuff, something's going on here.
Yep. No, and it gets the words get on people's minds, and they think about them, and they permeate them into their own mindset, and it's an important aspect of the normalization of all of this. I mean, we're seeing it right now with the way that with different groups are basically adopting different naming conventions and becoming more comfortable with calling things. Like Dave and I were talking about the other night about the fact that Professor Kaku Thank you. Yeah. Michikaku, is actually like entertaining the idea of off-world entities now, right? In public talks. Yeah. I mean, he has been for a couple months now, right? But that's a when he first started doing it, that was a big leap for him. And there's been a couple people at his level that have started making that leap. And I think as time goes on, you'll see more of those people make that leap, and then that will shift down, and then that group will then push a little further out on the edge of the surfboard, right? And and so you have this kind of tiered approach, and it's the truth of the matter is, I don't think disclosure is terribly sexy, but it's pretty interesting if you like the nuances of the data. I mean, it's certainly very fascinating to watch.
That's why I said I always point out that we are no different than any other social or political movement. We think that because it's an important subject, everybody should drop everything they're doing and join us. Right. But whether it's African American rights or gay marriage or whatever, it was something. Marriage came in, and I mean Cheney's daughter, this whole thing where Cheney was this arch conservative guy, and he just sort of accepted it. I went, holy cow, it was like it went from absolute sin into the point like nobody really cared. It was like, okay, so what? They want to get married, let them get married. And that's what I think the same thing's going to happen with UFOs. It's just going to change, and nobody's going to realize, like, when did it actually change? And everybody's going to go, well, I don't know when it was. It was like a little while ago. I don't know when it changed. Consciousness changes slowly, but it is changing.
Yep. No, I agree, and I think everyone has different kind of cutoff points. I mean, for me, just for me personally, it was the press, the talk that Lou Elizondo gave in March of 2018 at a science conference, and it was specifically the Q&A that you got to see if you watched it live, but that Q&A got cut later for the actual production. So you only got to see that Q&A if you watched it live. And watching him answer the questions, that was the first time for me I was like, whoa. You can take this you can take this to the bank. Like they're actually going to admit it this time. That's amazing, right? But I think everyone has a different moment like that. Everyone has some period that happened to them that was that flip extension, whether it was a sighting, whether it was going out and having coffee with one of them, whatever your relationship dynamic was with the entity. But yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think it's all what you see.
You're mentioning the other big one where you get these moments is when Lou Elizondo went on Fox and asked him about the crash saucers, and he said, "I believe." He uses that. He always uses the "I believe." Yeah, I believe. I can't say for sure, but I would believe. And that was a moment where you go, "Holy cow!" Like you can't believe that was actually said.
Yeah, I agree. Although I got to say, and if Lou Elizondo ever watches this, sir, I mean this with the most due respect, because I think it's cool. I've done this with my own friends, and I think it's cool when you do it. But I thought it was very interesting. I think we saw an interesting angle into how close Elizondo and Christopher Mellon have gotten, in that essentially when Elizondo was giving one of his talks and he started introducing Christopher Mellon, because Christopher Mellon was going to come on in a couple minutes, and the way he buttered this guy up, I mean, the way he talked this guy up and down, like this guy, if you needed him to make water, he could do it for you. Like, that's how good Christopher Mellon is, right? And you could hear him build it up, and it was fascinating to listen to him do it, because you could tell that they've become a very practiced team with this, and it's not fictitious. It's not like that. It's honest, but you can tell that they've gotten quite a pairing going up, and are probably presenting quite well together.
All right, John, John Hudson and the Unbiased UFO Report. Thank you for joining us with Grant Cameron and Nicole Sakach as we start to wind down here on the show. We're going to be talking UFOs again tomorrow night, because this is a hot button topic. We got to get into this. We need to drop
the name of that acronym again. What's that name of that acronym?
AOIMSG, or if you're looking on our store soon, SOR UFO. That's the way we're going to do it. We're going to make a new T-shirt, SOR UFO. And yes, I wish it was burrito time, little Marky Spender in the chat room, but it is not. But the UFOs will continue. Grant Cameron, Nicole Sakach, much love to both of you for hanging on out, going the distance, and the fedora-wearing John Hudson. Always a good time when you bring your fedora and the UFO news into SOR HQ. We got Mr. Ron Bubblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us each and every show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAB, Revolution Radio, Spreaker, Facebook, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, Nicole,
we own the night.
Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woe train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night.